Chapter 503. Because of Qin Guang's order, no matter how reluctant the ordinary people were, they had no choice but to obediently leave. Qin Guang clearly told them that this was not an act, not a joke, and not a boast. Once this piece of music is played, people will really die. By the time he finished all this, an hour had already passed. The sky outside was getting dark, the sun was setting in the west, and the evening sun was shining down from the other side of the sea, but the moon was already high up in the sky. Under the illumination of the sun and the moon at the same time, the sky of Treasure Island was filled with a dusky atmosphere, making people feel gloomy and depressed. Qin Guang sat in Wright's bar with a grim expression. Nearly 200 undying rank and above powerhouses were all sitting upright in the bar. Even the central royal families whose strength did not reach the standard were chased out. Outside the bar, dozens of volunteers with their ears plugged tightly surrounded the bar, preventing anyone from approaching. Old Bob stood far away and thought enviously. Although he didn't want to admit it, sometimes he also wished that he could be as strong as Baldev. Qin Guang gently drank a mouthful of water and looked around with an extremely grave expression. "Mr. Wright, it's done." Brook, one of the 12 Ocean Emperors, seemed to be subdued by Qin Guang's attitude as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He subconsciously lowered his voice and said so. "Baldev, check again. You must make sure that no one below undying rank can hear the sound of the piano. I really don't know what kind of consequences this will bring." Qin Guang and Brook nodded and instructed again. Brook also ordered Watson to walk around again and check whether the doors and windows were tightly closed. After ensuring that everything was foolproof, Qin Guang took a deep breath, suddenly stood up, and said with some excitement, "Everyone, I believe many of you already know how many songs I have played this year. But I can tell you that the song I am going to play today is different. The emotions contained in this song represent the most despairing moment of a person's life. In the process of my performance, perhaps many unexpected things will happen. You will remember the lowest state of mind in your life, and your mind will be greatly shaken. If you can get through this, I believe that this will be an extremely important turning point in your lives. Of course, I didn't really want anyone to die here. So, if I find someone can't hold on any longer, I will stop playing in time. Then at this time, you have to remember that I stopped because of you. It was you who ruined the opportunity for the 200 people here to listen to the complete song. Then you are a sinner." The more Qin Guang spoke, the more intense his tone became. There was an extremely fanatical look on his face. With his current status in the Treasure Island and even the Momentary Sea, no one dared to look down on his solemn attitude. Although Baldev's reputation is not obvious, his strength is close to the Sea Emperor level of armament hockey, and even he is infected by him to the point that he almost stops breathing. Brook, who was sincerely convinced by him, heavily patted his skeletal chest and said, "Lord Wright with me, Brook here, I will not let this happen. If anything goes wrong, I will throw the person out at the first moment. Everyone, don't blame me for being ruthless, this is also to protect everyone." "Good. Then I'll start." Qin Guang sat down and slowly put his hands on the keys. "Everyone, clean your ears and prepare to listen to the most pessimistic and despairing song in the history of the Momentary Sea." In fact, he didn't need to challenge Black Sunday to be able to defeat Brook in a sense. However, this wasn't the result Qin Guang wanted. What he wanted was to crush Brook in an open and above-board manner. He wanted to make Brook admit his defeat wholeheartedly and take out a song that could make his name resound throughout the entire Momentary Sea from then on. The choice of the original Black Sunday, which is one of the 3 forbidden songs in the history of emotional rendering, is undoubtedly the most appropriate. Even if this is the Momentary Sea because of some special reasons, too deep emotional rendering and touching is a risky and crazy move, which is likely to bring unexpected results. But if you don't lose the child, you can't catch the wolf. Qin Guang thinks it's worth it. Take a gamble and turn a bicycle into a motorcycle. As long as he can do it, he can make Brook completely convinced and let everyone think that he is the most powerful bard in the Momentary Sea. From then on, he won't have to continue to waste time on playing. He just needs to wait for his reputation and sound to spread, and then he can lie down and collect faith value. Then he can devote all his energy to the new business, Wright Divination House. Finally, The first note of Black Sunday was played, and the heavy atmosphere in the bar suddenly became darker and gloomier without any warning. Even the air began to thicken, making it difficult for people to breathe. The oil lamp, which was already very dim, swayed even though there was no wind, flickering on and off. Everyone in the audience was aware of the change in the atmosphere. This song really destroyed their minds. From the beginning, it pulled every one of them into an incomparably depressed state of mind. Brook's strength is tyrannical and his will is even more tenacious. However, he also recalled the reluctance and pain in his heart when he bid farewell to Captain Luffy and the others. He also recalled the despair and desolation he felt after waiting for 1,000 years without any news from his companions. What a despairing symphony it was. It was like a merciless monster, irresistibly and greedily devouring every inch of hope in the depths of one's heart. It could even make the most optimistic person lose all hope in an instant. Fortunately, everyone present is an undying rank expert and above. They have all experienced the trials and tortures between life and death. They all possess a constant and strong soul. Even in the face of such terrible setbacks and torture, they can still barely maintain their original hearts. Their souls were gradually brought into a storm by the music. They either dreamed of parting with their companions, or dreamed of their loved ones being torn apart in front of them, or recalled their most respected captain being torn to pieces in defeat, or like Brook, they became more and more desperate after thousands of years of bitter waiting. But they all persevered. No one would have thought that at this time, the one in the most awkward situation is not others, but the performer Qin Guang himself. F***CKU. I miscalculated. The audience is all undying rank. I'm not one. The old man is just a cute college student. When I learned this song in the piano world, my mind was sealed. I didn't feel anything at that time, but now I'm in a very bad situation. I've been pretending to be pretentious for a long time, and now the pretentious level is about to break through the sky. I was the first to be scared, and all my previous efforts have been wasted. I'm really F***ket up. Playing the piano in the sea of moments is poisonous. Originally, this song made a lot of people commit suicide after listening to it. Now, the emotional rendering seems to have been amplified by 100 times. The old man can't hold on any longer. As the saying goes, no matter how one calculates, one can't predict that the weakest one here is Qin Guang himself. But he has already forced himself into a corner, and there is no way out. After playing for less than 10 minutes, Qin Guang's face was pale and his head was covered in cold sweat. He anxiously looked around, hoping that someone would give up first. You're in so much pain and look so ferocious. Quickly take out your knife and commit suicide. I beg you. Baldef, you idiot. You can't hold on any longer. Qin Guang winked at Baldef. Baldef's mood became more and more excited. Mr. Wright actually values me so much I, Baldef, must not let him down. I must hold on. My hockey is ready to burst out. Today, I will use Mr. Wright's great music to break through Haushiko hockey. I will use my whole life strength to defend Mr. Wright's majesty. Looking at the increasingly bright and fanatical light in Baldef's eyes, Qin Guang burst into tears. What should I do? Who the hell can save me? You little bastards, why are you so hot? At this time, Qin Guang finally deeply understood what Ruri had said, that his mind was not strong enough and his mind could not reach the true standard of a redeemer. At that time, Qin Guang reluctantly listened to it, but deep in his heart, he didn't take it seriously. Today, he finally understood that he had messed up the piece he was playing. Perhaps he was the first person in history who would never be able to surpass him. As time passed, even if his mind was in a state of chaos, the music that was engraved into his instincts still made his fingers dance on the keys subconsciously. The air was thick and heavy, and even the light near the piano was absorbed by an inexplicable force. In Brook's eyes, the place where Qin Guang and the piano were located gradually became a black hole, and looking at it, it only felt dark and misty. Nearly 200 undead rank powerhouses, each of them felt that the hockey in their body was cheering and jumping in this terrible test. They deeply knew that if they survived this, what awaited them would be a white tomorrow. Finally, 47 minutes passed. When the last note came to an end, Qin Guang also stopped. The imposing manner of nearly 200 hockey advanced at the same time suddenly erupted in the bar, forming a resonance. The bar's roof was instantly broken, and the earth shook. The originally pitch-black night sky suddenly shone a bright ray of light from the sky, shining on the bar. 200 undead rank powerhouses stood up at the same time and looked at the place where Qin Guang and the piano were with a face full of worship. Everyone's face and body were shining with a great brilliance that transcended life and death. But Qin Guang and his piano were still in darkness. No matter how bright the light was, it couldn't illuminate his side, which was shrouded in black fog and couldn't even see his fingers. A terrible person like me is still alive in this world. I really let everyone down. These low murmurs and murmurs suddenly came from the black fog. Brooke and Baldef were startled. "Sir Wright." Baldef was the first to rush forward. Chapter 504. Bang. With another loud noise, Baldev used his haki, which had just broken through the haoshiku, to cut open the black fog with one palm. He saw Qin Guang's head hit the corner of the piano and his head was full of blood. Lord Wright is going to commit suicide. It turned out that he was really going to die. Everyone, at this moment, burst into tears and were moved to the extreme. In order to help everyone, Lord Wright played this forbidden song that would make him depressed and not want to live. He succeeded. He made a total of 200 strong undead hockey advance, and even Brooke, one of the 12 sea emperors who had reached the peak of the Sea of Time, advanced to another new realm. He wants to set off a new era of the Sea of Time. What a great feeling this is. Qin Guang's head was full of blood and his eyes were listless as he looked at these people. His consciousness had been shattered by the impact of Black Sunday, which was integrated with the rules of the Sea of Time. He had a splitting headache, as if there were 10,000 horses tied to ropes and tearing his body. Before his last consciousness collapsed, he only cursed in his heart. "I'm playing in the wilderness, but this time I've gone too far." Then Qin Guang punched himself in the chest. "Everyone, I'm going to die." He screamed hysterically again, "What the F*** seek? Oh my god. Bad luck." Qin Guang spurted blood and fell on his back. Brooke rushed forward and hugged Qin Guang. After a little test of hockey, he began to cry bitterly. "Lord Wright's heart is broken." "No. Mr. Wright." "Oh my god." There was a wail below. Brooke plopped down on his knees, his eyes were so deep that his eyeballs could not be seen, and 2 drops of crystal-clear tears flowed down. He thought to himself, "I once thought that my dedication was great enough, but compared with you, I am simply the difference between the light of a firefly and the splendor of the sun and the moon." The news that Lord Wright was killed by his own forbidden song in order to let 200 undying rankers advance into the Tyrant Aura realm swept through Treasure Island like thunder. As soon as Brooke knelt down, it was as if the first domino had been pressed. The 200 undying experts knelt down one after another. Then, the more than 1 million people on the island felt an indescribable grief in their hearts as they uniformly knelt down in the direction of Wright Square. That night, the clouds and thunder were raging on Treasure Island. It was raining cats and dogs. Strong winds and lightning swept across the island. Everyone knelt in every corner of the island and cried sorrowfully. Even the heavens and earth of the Sea of Moments seemed to be grieving over Wright's death. Only one person, with the most brainless worship, charged forward against the sudden storm and lightning, washed by the rain and tears. "My Mr. Wright, you can't die." This man was Bob. Of course, Qin Guang wouldn't die. He had 99 chances to resurrect. In fact, the moment he died, he resurrected immediately. But there was a slight accident. The unlucky Black Sunday was too fierce, and the aftereffects were too strong. Just as he was about to resurrect, his soul was scattered again. Thus, his whole person was stuck in a very mysterious state, on the verge of death but not dead, on the verge of life but not alive. His soul and body couldn't be unified, and he was only in a muddle-headed state of emptiness. Sooner or later, Qin Guang would be able to defeat Black Sunday, but it would take time. Under Bob's insistence, in the end, Qin Guang wasn't erected a tombstone. Within 3 days, Wright Square was transformed. 200 undying experts personally took charge of the hard work. In the center of the square, a huge statue of the handsome Mr. Wright was built. Behind the statue, there was a hall made of white jade, named the Sage Temple. Chen Guang's body was placed in a crystal coffin, hidden in a ventilated and cool basement, guarded by Baldev and Brooke, who had decided to settle down here. Brooke was appointed as the first head of the Sage Temple's fan club by Bob, who claimed to know Wright best. Baldev was the deputy head of the Sage Temple's fan club, and the other 200 undying experts were the backbone members of the fan club. More than 50 of them had armament hockey. Of course, they were born after the collective advancement. At that time, many people didn't understand why Bob didn't name it Knights Templar or Guardians of the Temple, but named such a lofty organization after food. Bob angrily rebuked everyone. When Mr. Wright first came to Treasure Island, he praised me. He said that I was his first fan in the transient sea. What Mr. Wright loved the most were fans. Mr. Wright comes from a mysterious area that you can't even imagine. This is the culture of his hometown. Since it's the culture of Mr. Wright's hometown, there must be a great philosophy in it. Brooke was the first to express his support. Moreover, Bob, can be 100% sure that although Mr. Wright doesn't have the strength of an undying expert, he will definitely be resurrected in this body. Bob's words shocked everyone to death. His judgment was based on the information he had secretly investigated. According to the information, 100 years ago, Mr. Wright, the second officer of the Annie, was around 20 years old. The current Mr. Wright was also a little over 20 years old. Mr. Wright doesn't have an undying soul, which can only mean that he has an undying body and soul. Unlike other people's undying, he doesn't age at all. This was the reasoning of a professional intelligence merchant. Bob firmly believed that this was the secret he was most proud of. Even Baldev didn't know about it. Baldev comforted him. "Little Bob, I understand your feelings, but..." Bob jumped up and angrily hit Baldev. "Baldev, you idiot! As long as 1 year, you will believe me." It didn't take a year. 3 months later, everyone believed Bob's judgment. How long can a dead body be preserved? This question doesn't need to be investigated too deeply. But after 3 months, Wright's complexion was still rosy. If not for his lack of breathing and heartbeat, others would even think that he didn't die at all, but just fell into a deep sleep. Believe me, Mr. Wright will definitely wake up. This is Bob's epitaph. 5 years later, in order to develop the sound shell brought back by Brooke into a phonograph shell, which can record zither music and broadcast it all over the world, the overworked Bob passed away on a quiet night at the age of 64. Before his death, he finally drew the last stroke on the design. The phonograph shell was announced. The zither music that Chen Guang left for his 10 disciples, as well as the 10 pieces he left for Brooke, were poured into countless phonographs, accompanied by merchant ships or pirate ships, and brought to all parts of the Sea of Transient. Not only that, but Brooke also systematized the musical notation taught by Chen Guang. Henceforth, the bards of the entire Sea of Transient will no longer have to practice alone. They will use the musical notation to record their every trace of inspiration, and at the same time, they can also learn new music from other people's musical notation. More powerful bards will be born in the Sea of Transient, and at the same time, more powerful pirates will be born. Chen Guang first used the Black Sunday to raise the realm of 200 people on the spot, and then left behind the musical notation to change the profession of bards. In the foreseeable future, the strength of the pirates of the entire Sea of Transient will be greatly improved. Poseidon created the history of pirates, Gol Roger used his death to open the great era of pirates, and Mr. Wright used his selfless dedication to open a new era of the strong. Another 5 years passed, and the 4-year-old Bob followed a huge fleet back from the outer seas. This pirate group was called the Royal Pirate Group. Chen Guang fulfilled his promise, bestowing Bob with an undying soul, and after Bob was resurrected, he became a member of the Royal's crew. Although there were countless coincidences involved, the young but mature Bob believed that it was all Mr. Wright's arrangement. The most mysterious new power in the Sea of Transient in the last 100 years, and Bullen, arrived with her sovereign king-like powerful fleet, causing Brooke to be extremely nervous. He and Buldev, who was guarding Treasure Island, brought dozens of undying rank experts to the port and waited. Buldev, although today I already possess the power of an overlord, and Bulin's mysteriousness is known to all. On the Enroyal, there are at least 300 undying rank experts. Nobody knows what frightening methods they have. Later, when the confrontation starts, you must protect the Sage Temple and absolutely cannot disturb Lord Wright's rest. Brook shook his crutch and said in a heavy tone. Vicious Wolf Buldev's face was gloomy. Does this female devil and want to become enemies with the entire Sea of Transient? She actually dares to attack Treasure Island. This is simply unforgivable. Perhaps she is jealous of our status, and also wants to become Lord Wright's follower. Another undying rank expert speculated. Seeing the fleet gradually approaching the shore, and the skull flag inlaid with roses becoming more and more distinct, Brook waved his hand. Everyone be quiet. Prepare for battle. However, the confrontation between the two sides did not last for more than a second. The 20-year-old and carrying the 4-year-old Bob in one hand, came treading on the waves, followed by Watney, Bartu, and other super experts. The 4-year-old Bob shouted in a childish voice, Captain, don't shoot. We're on the same side. Buldev, do you still remember little Bob by the Daming Lake? Buldev and Bob, who had followed Qinguang for a whole year, had heard Qinguang muttering these two words when no one was around. At that time, the two also questioned Qinguang for a long time, asking him what the captain's profession was, and which lucky woman Xia Yuha was. Qinguang gave the two men a kick each. But about a month before his death, Bob felt that his condition was not right and that he would not live long. He had already written his will, and with Buldev, agreed on the secret signal to meet. At that time, Buldev ridiculed Bob for not working hard to train, saying that he had no hockey, and that it was impossible for him to obtain the qualification of immortality, but Bob said another famous saying left by Qinguang, you still have to have a dream, what if it comes true? Now that the secret signal was correct, the hostility between Brook and Buldev instantly melted. Buldev laughed so hard that he clutched his stomach. Now you really have become little Bob. And threw little Bob far away, and Buldev caught him and pulled open his clothes. Come, little Bob, Grandpa will feed you milk. Get lost. Bob roared at the top of his voice. Chapter 505. Since then, Annie directly lived in the Sage Temple. Although Brook strongly opposed it, it was of no use. Annie knew Wright 100 years earlier than him. I have been waiting for him for 100 years. I don't want to waste another second. Brook, although you may be a bit stronger than me now, if you must taste this old woman's fist, this old woman doesn't mind dismantling your skeleton. A crazy woman who waited for a man for 100 years, even Brook didn't dare to look straight at her. Of course, what made him choose to concede was Bob's mediation, confirming that Qinguang had indeed said that he was once the second officer on the Enroyal. When Qinguang opened his eyes again, he saw a blonde girl with two big sapphire blue eyes bending down to wipe his body. Who's this? Is this figure going to break through the horizon? Your career line is a bit explosive. Your posture of bending down is a bit undignified. Is there a heaven in the sea of time? Did I accidentally open a new world? Wait, this girl looks a bit familiar? Perhaps because he had slept for too long, just waking up, his brain was still a bit slow. After a long time, a name gradually emerged in his heart. He finally remembered who she was. Captain Annie. Qinguang's mouth was somewhat unclear. He hadn't spoken for a long time. He almost forgot how to use his vocal cords to pronounce. The 18-year-old Annie's body suddenly shook, and the silk handkerchief in her hand suddenly fell to the ground. She slowly raised her head, and a pair of beautiful eyes stared at him. After a short moment of silence, tears poured down like a tide. She frantically shook Qinguang's shoulder, roaring at the top of her voice. Right? You bastard! I waited for you for 100 years. You finally came back. But you slept here for 100 years. You are a complete bastard. How much do you want to torture me before you give up? Why don't you let me die quietly? Why let me die again and come back to life? Why let me bear this endless pain of longing? Why did you leave without saying goodbye? Why didn't you confess to me one more time? I stared at the boundless night on the sea. I watched the flowers wither in the changing of the 4 seasons. I looked for you on the boundless sea while growing old and white-haired. Do you know how desperate I was? I wanted to die peacefully, but because of this damned undying soul, I had no choice but to wake up in my infancy. But from the moment I opened my eyes, even when I was still a baby, your name was always in my head. I finally heard from you. I crossed the ocean from 40 million kilometers away, tore apart 3 sea emperor monsters, defeated the black storm that no one could defeat, and shattered the lightning that fell from the sky. When I finally saw you, you were lying in this coffin like a corpse. I have to look at you year after year again. I have to look at your youthful face while I grow old day by day. Can you understand how afraid I was when you woke up? I was an ugly old woman, but I couldn't help but want to stay here and guard you. Chen Guang blankly looked at the crying Annie. Memories flooded in like a tide. He remembered that starry night when he was hung on the mast of Annie. After a long time, he slowly said, I thought you didn't like me. You are a fool. If I didn't like you, I would have chopped you to death the first time you boarded the ship. Annie Polly, this female devil whose name shook the entire transient sea, the most powerful and mysterious sea emperor in the last 100 years. Even Brooke, who had been promoted to an overlord, didn't dare to look down on her. This fully deserving of being the most powerful woman in the transient sea, this woman who had already reincarnated between life and death 3 times, and waited for Chen Guang for 3 lifetimes. At this moment, she gently stroked her long hair, looking like an innocent young girl. Frankly speaking, Chen Guang really didn't expect that after staying on in Royal for half a year, Annie would care so much about him. In his heart, he was more willing to regard Annie as a friend. He didn't dare to hope that this beautiful and powerful captain would truly like him. At that time, he plucked up the courage to write her a love letter, but that was the result of losing a bet with old Jack and Bart. Actually, I thought I wasn't that outstanding when I was the 2nd officer. Chen Guang said again. Annie moved her face closer. No, in my heart, you are more outstanding than anyone else. You are like a devil descending from the sky, easily shredding my heart. Obviously, I only stayed with you for half a year, but I feel like I have stared at you for an entire 20 years. What kind of magic did you cast on me? Chen Guang's mouth was wide open. Indeed, in a sense, he had indeed stayed in the transient sea for 20 years, but that was the accumulation of 20 years of resurrection. This was the greatest secret in his heart. He originally thought that it was impossible for Annie to know about it. However, he had underestimated Annie's 6th sense. Perhaps, Annie was originally not an ordinary existence. Otherwise, when he first entered the realm of transient sea, he would not have unknowingly landed on her ship. Alright, I'm sorry I can't explain it to you, but now I'm back. A woman waited for you for 200 years, the most appropriate thing to say to her, besides the 3 words I'm sorry, Chen Guang really didn't know how to answer. What's even more sorrowful is he knew that sooner or later he would leave, so he couldn't even give her a promise. Annie smiled. Yes, I didn't wait in vain. How are Warnie and the others? Chen Guang asked. They're fine, but now I don't have time to reminisce with you, my whole body is about to burn. Annie, don't be like this. I still haven't mentally prepared myself. This is too sudden. I will resist. If you can resist Annie, who has the strongest hockey and is now the head of the transient sea's 5 hegemons, using the words you once taught me, I will give you 32 likes. The deafening rumble spread to every corner of Leyte Island in an instant. Bob, who was lying on a beach chair sucking on a feeding bottle while glaring at Bald Eve fiercely, fell off from the chair due to the impact. Oh no, my little Bob. Baldiv, you idiot. The sound came from the holy temple. Something happened. When Baldev and Bob were about to reach the vicinity of the holy temple, Brooke came face to face. Brooke, you shameful deserter. Baldev and Bob cursed together. Brooke spat at the 2 men. Deserter my ass. Lord Wright is awake, Then why are you running? Quickly kneel with me. Bob struggled in Baldev's arms. Poor little Bob. Every time he appeared, he was either an old man or a baby. He had never been normal. Back then, when he returned with the Annie, he had taken good care of himself. As usual, he did not cultivate and instead became the butler of the Sage Temple. Based on Qin Guang's memory, he set up a right cultural communication company, sold phonographs to every corner of the transient sea, and built statues of right on at least 100,000 floating islands. Then he died at the age of 92, and now he has just been resurrected and is now 2 years old. Brooks stopped Baldev, who was about to go forward. "You can't go. People will die." Baldev roared angrily, gritting his teeth. "Brook, if you make trouble again, I will bite you to death." Lord Wright is doing shameful things with Captain Annie. This sound, it's this sound. It's them. If you want to die, I won't stop you, but don't stop me from evacuating the crowd. Holy shit. Baldev cursed. Killing in the grass. Bob cursed with his unique baby voice. The violent tremors continued for a full 8 hours. The strongest pile driver in history finally met his match. The 28 ocean emperors of the Age of Experts and Annie, the leader of the 5 hegemons, were naturally not easy to deal with. After waking up, Qin Guang's body was as powerful as a cheat in the transient sea. Of course, this was not the real divine immortal cup. His current body was powerful, but it couldn't be brought back to the real world. But this wasn't important. The important thing was that he could finally fight 80,000 rounds with others. This battle, the sky fell and the earth cracked, the sun and moon lost their light, the mountains howled and the seas roared. From noon when the sun was shining brightly, all the way until late at night when the waning moon hung high in the sky. The entire Central Sea was shaken by Wright Island, causing huge waves. Even the vast central continent seemed to have been hit by someone. The above was purely boasting. But it was indeed frightening. Qin Guang lay in a huge pit that was at least a dozen zhang deep, his face filled with confusion. The magnificent sage temple had long been razed to the ground, the white jade shattered to the point where not even dregs were left. "I don't know how you did it, but in short, your pile driver idol has appeared. It's a huge D***CK, I've already shaped it for you." Liuli's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. "Fuck. This wave is good, very strong, but..." In just one shot, the pile driver idol had appeared. "Also, what the hell do you mean you've already shaped it for me? I want to change it. At least change it to the shape of a cup. That way, when I mention this idol in the future, I can only say, it's an indescribable shape of 100 zhang." At this moment, Qin Guang was dumbfounded. "Wait a minute. Speaking of which, there's still the Qilin arm." Qin Guang screamed in his mind. Liuli ignored him. Annie, who was dripping with sweat, came over again. "Dear Reichen again? No, no, no. Let me take a breather." The strongest pile driver in history lowered its noble head in front of the even more unreasonable pirate queen. Qin Guang covered his face. "I've been if *King pushed down again." Why again? In short, after half an hour, the people hiding in the east corner of Wright Island finally returned one after another. The total population of Wright Island today was much less than when it was called Treasure Island. In the past 100 years, because the Sage of the Sea rested here, the original trading function of Treasure Island was gradually stripped away and abandoned. This place turned into an existence similar to the Church's Holy Land, and was eventually renamed Wright Island. Those who could settle down here were either representatives of major forces, outstanding bards, or descendants of those who worked in Wright's bar. Other than that, there were also core members of Wright's Cultural Communication Company, where Bob was the general manager. Qin Guang first spent an hour to comfort everyone, especially old Warney, who used to be a little follower and an old bastard. Now, little Bob couldn't stop crying. Annie, on the other hand, went to sleep with satisfaction. According to her words, "My man is back, I'm going back to be a noble lady." Chapter 506. Following that, the conversation between Qin Guang and the crowd was basically made up of, "Holy shit. It has become Wright Island. Holy shit. Sage Fan Club. Wright Cultural Communication Company. Holy shit, little Bob, you can do it. Of course, I am Lord Wright's most loyal servant. 2-year-old Bob bowed and said in a pious tone. Others didn't feel anything wrong, but for some reason, Chen Guang just didn't know why. Even if his temperament had already withstood the test of Black Sunday, and was definitely not the same as before at this moment, he really wanted to throw a shoehorn at Bob's face. No matter how he looked at it, Bob was asking for a beating. Right, didn't you say that I still have the sage temple and the statue? Where are they? Chen Guang looked left and right, up and down, but couldn't find them. Lord, before noon today your temple is here, and the statue is there. Brooke pointed to 2 different places behind Chen Guang. Chen Guang pushed his hands, acting like he couldn't bear to recall the past. Forget it, it's gone, don't mind those details. Then he grabbed Bob and raised him in front of him. I really have to praise you, Bob. You've done a really good job, you've worked hard. Chen Guang looked at this child's face. He didn't expect this guy to remember what he had accidentally mentioned. In order to develop the phonograph shell, he had worked himself to death. Fortunately, he could be resurrected. What was even more amazing was that he had used 100 years to spread his name and phonograph shell to almost every place in the Sea of Time. Just now, Chen Guang sensed that his current production of faith value was as high as 130 billion a day. This meant that Bob's demonic claws had spread to almost 73% of the population of the Sea of Time. Right now, in Chen Guang's warehouse, there was an outrageous amount of faith value. He couldn't be bothered to count the exact number. After all, according to what Ruri had said, the small surprise that would appear after the daily production reached the level of 100 billion was already there. Just as he had expected, Leyte Island could be moved by paying faith points. Then, the next step would be to first try to understand the relatively easier languages. Then, he would control the 10-kilometer-wide Leyte Island and start an unprecedented tour of the Sea of Moments. Thinking about it, it was quite exciting. What is your ship? The old man's ship is an island. Accumulating faith should have been something that Chen Guang had to put in a lot of effort and work himself to death to achieve. In the end, after sleeping for 100 years, Bob had done it for him. Of course, he had to praise him heavily. Bob burst into tears again. Lord, right. In order to spread your glory, I, old Bob, can bear it no matter how hard and tired I am. It was you, Lord, who changed my life. Lord, you said that you would give me immortality. Now, a lazy and untalented person like me can also have an immortal soul. It is all thanks to you, Lord. This guy kept shoving his tears and snot into Chen Guang's face. He was even scarier than Greasy Bob. Chen Guang hurriedly threw him away. Click. Bob landed on the ground and stood up with his hands on his hips. Yes, Lord. Then he immediately turned to Baldev and raised his eyebrows. Did you see that, Baldev? Although I, Bob, am not talented and can't learn hockey, I am more useful to Lord than you. In the future, you are not allowed to force me to learn hockey. Baldev glared at him fiercely. Little Bob, call me Daddy. Chen Guang watched the two quarreling with interest. He thought that with Baldev's arrogance, with Bob's character, he would definitely jump up and fight him. Unexpectedly, Bob first looked at Chen Guang with an aggrieved expression, then turned to Baldev and said with gritted teeth, Dad. Baldev grinned and hugged Bob, kissing him intimately on the cheek. He then turned to Chen Guang and said, Lord, 2 years ago, my wife gave birth to a chubby boy, Bob. Chen Guang's mouth formed an O shape. He first looked at Bob, whose face was as rotten as a bitter gourd, and then at Baldev, who was full of satisfaction. After a long time, he sighed. It's too tragic. There were 178 billion people in the instantaneous sea. How unlucky would Bob have to be reincarnated into the belly of Baldev's wife? From the perspective of probability, this was much more difficult than buying a lottery ticket and becoming rich overnight. Bob roared, Bald, this time, when you die, I will marry 100 wives. Give birth to 800 sons. One of them will be you. Don't fall into my hands. You're a poisonous husky. Chen Guang slapped his forehead. Damn, this ethical relationship is too crazy. The great sage had awoken from his long slumber. This was a day worthy of celebration. Under Brooke and Bob's efforts, the transmission shell and the phonograph shell had spread throughout the instantaneous sea. Early in the afternoon, the news that Sage Wright had woken up from his dreams spread like a wave through the spiderweb-like communication network of sound transmission shells. In the afternoon, when Guang and Annie were locked in battle, the royal families of the Middle-earth continent, Nok continent, Eastern continent, and many other continents came to a decision. Today was a special day. Every year, the 8th day of the 3rd month would be designated as the Day of the Sage. To commemorate the resurrection of the great Sage Wright, who had single-handedly started the era of the strong. Not only that, another legend that had been circulating in the Middle-earth Sea 100 years ago had also been confirmed. To be able to conquer Sir Wright in bed, only a woman of Ocean Emperor rank and above could do so. As expected of the great sage, everything he did was so powerful. To be able to fight with the terrifying Annie for 8 hours, he was fully deserving of being the overlord of the instantaneous sea. The instantaneous sea was a world of the strong where the weak were prey to the strong. This kind of thing that was very difficult to talk about in the outside world had instead added another layer of glory to Guang in this world. He didn't sleep for the whole night. On one hand, it was to seek refuge. On the other hand, Guang had been guarding the demon juicer the whole night. Looking at the room full of demon juicers, his mouth was about to crack from laughing. Halfway through his laughter, Guang's expression changed and he reminded himself, "I can't be so happy. I'm a respected great sage now. I've also experienced life and death for 100 years. I can't be so frivolous, I have to be steady." No, by the time I thought about it, I had already broken the spell. Damn, I feel like I'm hopeless. Pushing the door open, the loyal Bob was already waiting at the door with a bottle of milk. Who knew where he ordered a set of exclusive aristocratic clothing for babies? It looked quite out of place. "My most respected Lord Wright, you're awake? Your most loyal servant, Bob, is here to greet you." Without saying anything, Guang stripped Bob until he was only left with a diaper. "This looks much more pleasing to the eye. My lord, you really have a keen eye. I also feel much more refreshed." Guang strolled around the current Leyte Island, observing the local customs and practices. 100 years would change a lot. The once bustling trade district and flea market district had long since become empty. Even the trading hall had been razed to the ground. What replaced it was a beautifully trimmed garden. Small statues of Guang could be seen everywhere, as well as a phonograph that could play a zither with a light tap of one's palm. Anyone who came to Leyte Island would fall in love with it. Because of its beautiful scenery, it was filled with a rich artistic atmosphere. Almost every year, there would be pirates recuperating here and advancing. However, the population of the entire Sea of Time was too great. If everyone were to flock here, Leyte Island would probably sink to the bottom of the sea. Therefore, with the 2 hegemons, Brooke and Annie, as well as the agreement of the other 3 hegemons, including Blackbeard Teach, the following decision was made. Every year, only 50,000 slots would be opened to the public. The slots would be distributed according to the population distribution of the major powers and the floating island. As for the negotiations between the powers, the Sage Temple couldn't care less. It was only right and proper for the strong to come first. Accompanied by Bob, Guang chatted while thinking hard about how to carry out the business of the divination house. Currently, he had 2 ideas. One was to use his influence as a great sage to directly announce to the public that he needed people to sacrifice for him. Without a doubt, even if everyone knew that they would be unable to speak from then on, there would definitely be countless people flocking to him. However, Guang felt that this wasn't appropriate. Up until now, he had built up the image of a selfless great man. This might damage his prestige. If people thought that he was demonized, it would affect the production of faith. That would not be worth it. Although he no longer lacked faith in the Sea of Time, Guang was still counting on the exchange rate promised by Lioli after he left. After lying in bed for 100 years and spending so much effort, he couldn't possibly lose his integrity in his old age. Another way of thinking was to follow his original plan. He would use the model of a businessman to introduce a divination house service. However, there was a new problem. Guang wasn't sure how receptive the people in the Sea of Moments were to this matter. How was he going to speak to them about it? After thinking hard for an entire day, he came up with nothing. By the time he returned to the mansion in the center of the island, the sun had already set. Annie was here again. The residents of Leyte Island spent an unforgettable sleepless night. The entire island maintained a subtle frequency of vibration. From the beginning of the night until the sun rose in the morning, the vibration was more intense and lasting than yesterday. Early in the morning, lying in the pit, Chen Guang hazily looked at the mansion that had been razed to the ground. He then looked at Annie, who was sleeping soundly with her arms around him. His heart was filled with embarrassment. After a long time, a maid timidly came over. "Lord Wright, Lord Brooke wants to see you." Chen Guang let the maid find more maids to clean up the mess, while he shrunk his neck and walked towards the original Wright Square, which was now Brooke's office. Brooke had been living here for 100 years ever since he willingly lost to him. In order to maintain the dignity of Leyte Island, he could be said to have worked hard without complaint. Today, when he shouldn't have been disturbed, he actually sent someone to deliver a message. Obviously, something big had happened. "Lord Wright, something has happened on the island." Brooke squirmed, his skeleton-like fingers crisscrossed. He looked very nervous and it was difficult for him to speak. Chapter 507. What happened? Is it very serious? In the past, Leyte Island was round like the sun, but now we have forever lost a piece of land in the east. Now, Leyte Island looks like a pizza that has been bitten off by Buldev, missing a corner. Chen Guang was furious. "What? There's actually such a thing. Did someone attack us?" Brooke shook his head. "No, no, no. In the entire Sea of Time, no one would try to harm us, and no one would have the guts to do so. This is a very natural collapse. Fortunately, at that time, there was no one in that area. It happened this morning." The more Brooke said, the lower his head drooped. Chen Guang's face turned red. "Oh my God, how could I do this? Was there such a big movement? I didn't realize it at all, as I was closely involved in the situation." "Don't mind those details. Losing a little piece of land is no big deal. In any case, it didn't sink, right?" At this time, the ground under the two's feet suddenly trembled, the entire Leyte Island fiercely shaking. Monstrous waves soared to the sky. No, not monstrous waves, but currents from all directions. Damn, Leyte Island is going to sink. In a sense, as a speck of dust floating on the surface of a water cup, as a 10-kilometer diameter floating island, after losing a piece of land, the balance was broken, and after several hours of brewing, a major event finally happened. In Chen Guang's heart, 10,000 alpacas whizzed past. I really sank the island. The price of my life as husband and wife is a bit too high. Brooke, who has lived for thousands of years, had rarely seen such a terrible thing as the sinking of a floating island. He was scared to death. No one knew how deep the bottom of the sea was, but everyone knew that every floating island was a precious and non-renewable resource of the Sea of Time. Even if two super experts with a blood feud were to fight for their lives, they still wouldn't be willing to destroy every floating island. Floating islands are the most precious treasures bestowed by the god of the Sea of Time to the people of the sea. They are the most devout faith of all the intelligent beings in the entire Sea of Time, not to mention Leyte Island, this large floating island. What happened? What should we do? My God! Brooke unexpectedly screamed. The incident happened in a hurry, and it was too late to escape. Even if experts like Chen Guang or Brooke could escape, it would be difficult for the existence on the island below the undying rank to survive this terrible, natural and man-made disaster. Chen Guang's mind raced, and an idea came to him in the blink of an eye. Thanks to the faith value, its effects were really too comprehensive. Now that Chen Guang knew what was going on, he no longer panicked. Instead, he let out an evil and wild laugh and looked at Brooke. "Brooke, I really can't believe that you are actually one of the 5 hegemons. You've really lost my face." In Chen Guang's memory, the skeleton Brooke in the One Piece manga was also famous for being timid. As a skeleton, he was as timid as a mouse. He could even scare himself when he looked in the mirror. Brooke, the musician in the Sea of Fleeting Time, was no better. "Lord Wright, it's not that I'm a coward, it's just that this is too scary. It really gave me the creeps. Although I basically don't have any hair. Brooke still screamed, and then began to yell at the top of his lungs, "Everyone, quickly escape. It's going to sink." Baldev also fiercely pushed open the door and entered. "Lord, I'll protect you." The shaking outside was getting more and more intense, and the huge island was rapidly sinking. Near the square, countless people were screaming and running in panic. Even Annie was awakened from her sleep, wearing a battle armor and stepping on the air. Annie angrily roared, "Who is it? Who dares to destroy this old lady's love nest?" Little Winnie, who was following behind her, reminded in a low voice, "Captain, it might be that when you and Uncle Wright were having sex, the shaking was too intense. Wright Island might be." Annie, after a short silence, her whole body emitted black gas, and she suddenly raised her arms and shouted, "That, in any case, let's save as many as we can. Come." Princess Annie's royal guard wore soul. A black fog rose from her back, covering the sky and covering the earth. Her giant ship and royal unexpectedly appeared in midair, and then landed on the right square with a loud bang. This was one of the many powerful black magic that Annie had mastered, which could instantly summon the ship to her side. "Everyone, quickly board the ship." Annie once again landed on the ground, one hand pressed on the ground, and an even denser black gas emitted from her body. The blue veins on her neck swelled, and a tyrannical domineering aura diffused from her body. She roared, "Rise for me." Seeing Annie's action, Brooke finally found his backbone. "I also have domineering aura." "You just remembered it." Bob hugged Baldev and scolded, "Dad, bite him." Brooke and the other strong undead used their domineering aura together, finally slowing down the sinking speed of Wright Island. Although it still couldn't stop it, it bought a lot of time for people to board the ship. At this time, Chen Guang coughed lightly, suddenly stood on the balcony, opened his arms, and said loudly, "Everyone, don't panic, I'm here." Everyone turned their heads to look at him. For a moment, Chen Guang's image became radiant. The way he opened his arms to embrace the air resembled a true saint. "O sky, I am willing to offer my soul, my life, my everything. Grant me the power of the prophet, the ruler of all things in the world, the spirit that controls wind and thunder, the Holy Spirit of the sea. Heed the call of my great prophet, Wright Shin. Cross the distant space and time, gather on my territory, protect my people. Come." The power of fate. Cover this Wright Island, turn it into the Ark of Life. Stirring up all the air in his chest, Chen Guang let out the loudest cry of his life. In this almost doomsday-like scene, everyone's attention was attracted by his seemingly mindless crazy action. One after another, the people who gathered raised their heads. For some reason, everyone had an illusion that at this time, Chen Guang's whole body was surging with a dazzling radiance that people couldn't look straight at. Great teleportation technique. Chen Guang continued to assume the pose of a charlatan, roaring, but his mouth was silently saying, "Pick a place, move for me quickly." Leyte Island, which had been sinking continuously, began to rise slowly. The seawater that had just poured in receded from each block, surging violently. In addition, every rock on the entire island, every inch of soil, every building connected to the island's ground, became sparkling and translucent in an instant, emitting a crystal-like radiance. The entire island continued to rise, and an unknown buzzing sound resounded throughout the world. Although no one knew what was happening at this time, this phenomenon was clearly beyond everyone's understanding. A miracle. An inconceivable miracle. Brooke exclaimed while covering his mouth. Annie also withdrew her domineering aura, her eyes filled with excitement and worship. "I knew you could do it. Worthy of being my, Annie's man." Bob raised his arms and shouted, "My great master! Bob is your eternal believer." Brooke's eyes were filled with tears, thinking, "Luffy, did you see?" Finally, such an inconceivable strong person appeared on the sea of time. He will certainly lead us to find true freedom. Chen Guang smiled at everyone, trying hard to maintain his unfathomable appearance, thinking, to be honest, if not for this matter, I really didn't know that moving Wright Island would cause such a big commotion. Now it's good, letting everyone experience it in advance, so that next time they can be mentally prepared. It's a blessing in disguise. Just don't know where it will be moved to? The radiance on the island gradually became more and more intense, including Qinguang. Everyone couldn't see anything clearly, only a stretch of white. Even the people next to them couldn't see clearly. Finally, when everything became quiet, all the radiance suddenly disappeared. All around, it was pitch black. One couldn't even see one's fingers in front of one's hand. The rumbling sound didn't seem to stop, still sweeping towards the island like a tsunami. *CK. I mean, randomly pick a place, but you can't directly choose the bottom of the sea. Regarding this situation, Chen Guang immediately understood. This is King embarrassing. I thought you were floating in the sky, but in the end, you are even more unreasonable. Teleportation is fine, but you directly teleported to the bottom of the sea for me. Hey, 110, come and save me. There's a cup here showing off. The situation is already out of control. Little Yaoling couldn't save him. In the darkness, the turbulent sea swept over like a huge swallowing beast. In the face of the majesty of nature, even Brooke and Annie, who stood at the top of the world, were filled with a feeling of powerlessness to resist. It's over. This time it's completely over. Brooke finally cried bitterly, shouting, Luffy, I'm sorry. I'm going to bring the secret to the bottom of the sea. Dying under such a disaster, it must be the god of the transient sea punishing me. Skeleton Brooke, am not willing. Annie threw herself at Qinguang, her mind in a state of panic. She, who has always lived in the sea, knows the power of the sea. No one knows how deep the transient sea is. Rumor has it that the bottom of the sea is deeper than the length of the sea. She also doesn't know how many meters below the sea, that terrible water pressure can instantly crush the greatest powerhouse into pieces. She clenched the pendant on her chest, praying in her heart, Father, Grandfather, all my great ancestors passed down the power to me. I must bring my most beloved man back to the surface of the sea. The pendant suddenly released a dazzling radiance. This is the holy radiance. This is Annie's final trump card. Without a trace of hesitation, she is willing to use the magic contained in this pendant to protect Qinguang. Under the illumination of the last ray of light in the darkness, everyone finally saw Qinguang's expression. He still maintained a calm smile. Everyone don't panic, I still have a second move. Great Holy Shield. Chapter 508. Hurry up and use some Holy Light Shield. This time I'm really going to go overboard. I'll give money and faith value, okay? Chen Guang roared madly in his heart, his eyes quickly sweeping across the light curtain that only he could see, almost going blind. Big brother, stop messing around, this time I'm really going to go overboard. If you have any dissatisfaction with me, please come at me, okay? Don't hurt my fans. If worst comes to worst, I'll just die again. Stop messing around. Perhaps the overly strong obsession finally made the heavenly Holy Grail choose to compromise. A line of words suddenly appeared on the light curtain. Light curtain technique. Paying faith value can protect the stability of the Redeemer's Cup. The amount of payment fluctuates according to the intensity of the impact the light curtain receives. Finally giving me a life-saving trump card, Chen Guang was extremely moved. For the first time, he felt that the Holy Grail was so reasonable. After a moment, under everyone's gaze, a light curtain slowly rose from the periphery of Leyte Island with a diameter of 10 kilometers. The gorgeous golden white light curtain gathered in the middle at a speed visible to the naked eye, finally forming a perfect dome in midair, exuding a soft light. Before the turbulent seawater could reach the ground of Leyte Island, it was sucked back by this layer of light curtain like a sponge, and finally blocked outside, unable to advance an inch. The position of the light curtain was exactly the invisible wall that was intercepted by Chen Guang when he first arrived at Treasure Island, intending to take the horseshoe to smuggle him in, completely overlapping. Chen Guang let out a long sigh of relief. This place is my base. If I really go overboard, then wouldn't I have to lie in the water and pretend to be a god? What is this situation? This is the deep sea. Brooke looked up at the shining dome above his head, completely incoherent. Beside him, Watson took out an instrument and said with a trembling voice, "Sir Brooke, this is 100 million kilometers under the sea." "Impossible. This is absolutely impossible," Brooke screamed. Watson shouted in a louder voice, "But it is indeed like this. 100 million kilometers." Hearing Watson's resolute statement, Bob lay on the ground. "Oh my God." Before this, the deepest record to the bottom of the sea was left by Magellan with his godlike Magellan, but after a short period of silence, everyone turned their heads to look at Chen Guang, who was standing on the balcony, and the look in their eyes was strange. This was definitely not the gaze they had when facing a human. They were treating Chen Guang as a god. This was not a miracle that was shouted out, but the work of a true god. Brooke slowly approached, his hollow eyes projecting a burning light. "Lord Wright is a man who is cared for by the sea of time." Everyone was on the verge of kneeling again. Chen Guang's heart ached, but he still had a warm smile on his face. He raised his hand slightly and said, "Everyone, don't be like this. It's just a small matter, not worth mentioning. I only brought you here on a whim. The greatness of the instantaneous sea cannot be understood without experiencing it for yourself. 200 million kilometers under the sea, how majestic, how beautiful. This is simply the most generous gift from the Creator. I will let you see the magnificent scenery of the sea." Wright said, "Let there be light." But he continued to pay the faith value and turned on the searchlight function. Rich, willful, saved for 100 years, how to spend it, how to spend it. Wright Island became the sun under the sea, the strong light from the center of the dome straight into the distance. This beam of light shone on the bottom of the sea, revealing a pitch-black giant that was so huge that it almost made one's mind stop at first glance. It was boundless. Chen Guang thought, this is most likely the legendary undersea continent, the old man's tea foam. The group of people looked into the distance with a heart full of curiosity, and sure enough, they were captivated by the extremely spectacular scene. Brooke forcibly suppressed the excitement in his heart, and finally found an opportunity to approach Chen Guang and whispered, "Lord Wright, I have something to say to you." "Mr. Brooke, if you have something to say, just say it. You and I don't need to be so polite." Chen Guang was puzzled by Brooke's solemnity. Brooke looked solemn. "This is a serious matter. Shall we go over there to talk?" Chen Guang pursed his lips, feeling that Brooke was a bit strange, but seeing his pitiful appearance, he decided to take care of his mood. The two went to the corner, while the others rushed to the edge of Wright Island, wanting to get closer, wanting to see the scene of 200 million kilometers under the sea. This was not an opportunity that one could have at any time. "Lord Wright, I was indeed a member of the Straw Hat Pirates." Brooke hesitated a little, as if making a great decision, then said. Chen Guang curled his lips. "I know, Luffy, Sauron, Sanji, Nico, Robin, Nami, Chopper, Usopp, Frankie. As for you, Skeleton Brooke, you are the last to join the Straw Hat Pirates." "Oh my God. Lord Wright, are you a prophet? Why do you know everything?" Brooke was greatly frightened. Chen Guang mysteriously smiled. "Yes, I am indeed a prophet. But I was separated from my captains after we found Gol Roger's treasure." "What?" This time, it was Chen Guang's turn to be shocked. The world of Transient Sea was constructed according to his memory of One Piece and Pirates of the Caribbean, but Chen Guang didn't expect that the biggest explosive point of Gol Roger's treasure would be imagined by the heavenly Holy Grail. Seeing that Chen Guang finally revealed a surprised expression, Brooke regained some confidence. "Lord, do you want to know what Gol Roger's treasure is?" "What?" "A letter. In the letter, he said that the master of the Eternal Hand is alive." "How inconceivable! We live in someone else's cup, we are pets raised in captivity." The more Brooke spoke, the more excited he became. Abruptly, he pulled open his own dress. Chen Guang turned his head to look, and his pupils shrank. Brooke's chest, indeed, had no flesh and blood, only bones. "Lord, I am afraid that after death, I will never be able to wake up again. Therefore, many years ago, I stopped being reborn. My current appearance is due to the black magic I learned from the Dark Continent, which allows me to continue living in the form of a skeleton. While explaining, Brook removed the third rib from his chest, gently pulled it to both sides, and the rib broke into 2 pieces. His trembling fingers pulled out a piece of yellow paper from inside, and handed it to Qinguang's hand. "This is the letter that Gol Roger left for us." This is not Gol Roger's view alone, but after finding the travels of Poseidon, Magellan, Columbus, and the Eastern navigator Zheng he summed up the knowledge of all the sages. Brook didn't notice Qinguang's complexion. Instead, he became more and more excited. "Lord Wright, think about it, how sorrowful this is. In order to find out the truth of this mystery, my captain and other companions have already gone to the endless deep sea, and I am shouldering the hope of returning to the 5 great seas to pass on this secret. I know that by doing this, we are becoming enemies with the entire sea, but I have no way out. Gol Roger has already paid with his precious life, and he doesn't hesitate. I, Brook, am also willing to sacrifice everything for the people of the entire transient sea to obtain freedom." Brook fiercely knelt on the ground. "Lord, I was already in despair, but your appearance, let me see new hope. You have opened the era of the strong. Please lead us to break out of this terrible cage and rebel against the master of the eternal hand. We must truly live." Chen Guang blankly looked at Brook from the skeleton guy's eye sockets, projecting a fanatical light like that of a party member. His whole person is like a Spartan. Although I don't want to admit it, the master of the eternal hand that you must rebel against is the fucking old man himself. You are making things very difficult for me. Brook, don't be too excited. Until now, how many people know and believe this matter? Chen Guang strived to calm himself down, calmly asking, simultaneously bending over to help Brook up. Until now, only me and my assistant Watson know. I have tried to talk to Teach and Dutchman David and Dreadsicle, but they all thought I was joking. I didn't dare to tell them that I received Gol Roger's letter and could only talk to them. This is my own speculation. I already have no next resurrection. They are all our last hope. I can't let the curse of the transient sea spread from me to them. Because you are the son of God favored by the sea, I dare to talk to you. Brook's tone became more and more devout. Chen Guang very much wants to tell him that the old man isn't the son of God. The old man is your God. Regarding your experience, I am very sympathetic, but I am also helpless. Although I can use faith to stir up the wind and rain in the transient sea, I can't make this plane advance a step from the lower plane of the transcendent Holy Grail. But if this matter were to spread out, it would be too sad. At this time, Chen Guang's mind recalled a movie he watched a long time ago, The Wonderful Night at the Museum. In that movie, the toys were endowed with life, turning into one living person or animal after another. But no matter how real they look in the movie, they are in the end toys living on the screen. They are infinitely far away from the real world. When the movie ends, their lives are declared to have come to an end. At this time, the people in the transient sea, relative to Chen Guang and the real world he lives in, are a bit like the characters in The Wonderful Night at the Museum, real, yet illusory. Now, in this illusory world, someone suddenly tells him, "I have discovered this world's secret. I beg you to lead us to rebel against this cruel fate, to overthrow the ruler of the eternal hand." A strong sense of incongruity and powerlessness makes Chen Guang at a loss. He is a little moved by Brook's faith and spirit. In addition, standing in front of him is not only Brook, but also the countless fearless warriors who have fallen in the pursuit of truth and freedom in the transient sea. Chapter 509. For example, Poseidon, who fought against the sea for his entire life and used his body to defeat Sea Emperor-level monsters, creating the first Sea Emperor-level powerhouse. Magellan, who spent tens of thousands of years traveling to every corner of the 5 seas and 1/3 of the outer sea, drew the first sketch of the eternal hand. He lived alone at the border of the Sea of Moments for tens of thousands of years. Every time he was reborn, he would rush to the corner where he could see the hands of eternity without hesitation. He would observe the hands of eternity subconsciously moving slightly, and he would find the changes in the skin lines of the giant hands. Zheng He visited all the continents and compiled the understanding and ideas of all the powerhouses of the past tens of thousands of years into a great masterpiece, and wrote a full stop with the last drop of blood. Gol Roger, who shouldered all the pressure and gathered all the knowledge left by the sages, came to a conclusion and gave up his life for it, and then opened the great age of pirates. Never compromising on the road to pursuing their dreams, giving up the easy life of a hegemon, and following the path of no return of their predecessors, the Straw Hat people bravely walked down. Every one of them was so great that even Qin Guang, the master of the transient sea, felt very insignificant. Chen Guang was almost suffocated by the persistence of this group of dolls. If he had the ability, he certainly hoped to give the entire transient sea a more real life, let them be free, and let the transient sea become the same as the universe where the Earth is, become a real plane or universe. But, at least for now, Qin Guang couldn't do it and didn't know what to do. He was helpless. Brook, I understand your feelings, but right now we really can't do it, and there is nothing I can do. Chen Guang wanted to say some lies to comfort him, to give him some illusory hope, but as soon as the words came out of his mouth, he unconsciously spoke the truth. Brook's excitement, like a candle broken by cold water, was completely extinguished in an instant. Chen Guang was a prophet in his mind. If a prophet said so, then perhaps there really was no hope. Moreover, Chen Guang's tone contained a certainty that only he himself knew. Unlike others, Chen Guang had already seen through the greatest secret of the instantaneous sea, so when he spoke, there was a hint of his own judgment in it. Perhaps Qin Guang himself didn't realize it, but Brook could hear it. His eyes gradually darkened, and his bones that were constantly trembling from excitement and agitation also slowly calmed down. Lord Wright, do we really not have the slightest chance? Because of his absolute trust and worship, Brook simply didn't ask where Qin Guang's judgment came from, only using a tone of seeking confirmation, wanting to hear this despairing answer again. Chen Guang nodded. Yes, no chance at all. Even if you have already created such a great art, with your help, the pirates of the Shuzhou Ocean are becoming stronger every day, and we even have 5 hegemons, and even a powerful prophet like you, is it still impossible? Impossible. Brook, don't ask me this question again, this matter is beyond your imagination. Chen Guang somewhat impatiently waved his hand. The more Brook asked him, the more helpless Chen Guang was. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you unhappy. Brook turned his face away, remaining silent. Chen Guang thought for a moment, then said, Brook, what I said is that there is no chance now, but it doesn't mean that it will be impossible in the future. I don't want to easily make any promises, there are a lot of things that I can't say to you too clearly. But what you want to do, what you want to obtain, is equally recognized by me. In the future, sooner or later, there will be a day when I will bring freedom to the people of the instantaneous sea. Therefore, you might as well try to live longer, so that you may have the opportunity to see that day. Chen Guang's mood was very complicated, and also very strange. He didn't understand why he wanted to bring this group of people to rebel against his rule, it was simply stupid. Perhaps what Lioli said was really right, after all, he didn't have the potential to become a god, he couldn't be like the gods in other novels, seeing mortals as ants. Being moved by his own toy, and then wanting to help the toy get rid of his control, this was really King sad. On the other side, hearing his words that weren't a promise but were better than a promise, in the blink of an eye, Brook's eyes lit up again. While the two were chatting, Baldev ran over with Bob in his arms. Bob shouted, Sir, can you think of a way to let us go out a little bit? Qin Guang was puzzled. What's wrong? Bob beamed with joy and said, We found a floating rock at the edge of Lady Island. It's dazzling, too beautiful. It's simply a perfect creation of nature. Sir, if we can cast a statue of you from the 200 million li of rock at the bottom of the sea, how exciting it would be. Your first statue has been lost because of an accident, now it's time to rebuild a great statue for you. Bob's life was a flattering and unscrupulous life. All his skill points were added to flattery. At first, because he firmly believed that Qin Guang would wake up, in order to flatter him, he changed from an intelligence merchant to a scientist, developing phonograph shells. After developing phonograph shells, in order to better flatter, he changed from a scientist to a businessman, founding the Right Culture Communication Company. Now, when everyone found a floating rock together, the minds of others were only marveling at how beautiful the underwater scenery was, but he was the first to react. This could be used to make a tree statue. With this kind of stunt, if it was in the Qing dynasty, he would be a treacherous and capable minister like He Shen. Chen Guang took this opportunity to get rid of Brooke. In any case, he had already said this much to him. If he wanted to say anything more, he wouldn't be able to do anything. The group of people came to the edge of the light curtain, and sure enough, they found that not far away, there was a floating rock emitting a sparkling white light, hundreds of feet high, magnificent and magnificent. Chen Guang thought, if this thing was exchanged for jade gambling in the real world, it should be worth at least tens of billions, right? Can't we just throw something out and tie it up and pull it over? Chen Guang asked. Baldev took out his beloved huge sword that he had used for hundreds of years. Sir, this is my personal weapon. It became like this as soon as I stretched it out. Chen Guang looked at Baldev's huge sword, with a foot-long hilt and a 3-inch blade, and was silent for a long time. He felt that it would be easier to move the entire island forward. Greater teleportation. It's falling down. Boom. The group of people struggled for a long time. Brooke, who had quite high artistic attainments, personally carved the statue, while Bob, Chen Guang's #1 fan, was responsible for providing artistic advice. Chen Guang felt that he had played enough underwater, so he once again summoned the light curtain, intending to return to the surface. If he hadn't seen it, he wouldn't have known, but when he saw it, he was startled, feeling as if his body had been hollowed out. When he summoned the light curtain, he didn't carefully look at the specific expenses, so he didn't understand the true meaning of the sentence. The payment amount will fluctuate according to the intensity of the impact. Only now did he realize how heavy his losses were. It was too late for regrets. Using the light curtain to resist the terrible water pressure at a depth of 200 million miles would consume trillions of faith points every second. Every second. Trillions. It hadn't even been half an hour, but his wealth was almost depleted. In the blink of an eye, his 100-year foundation would be destroyed in an instant. I'm going to be a fucking pauper. This is definitely a trap. It was a trap from the very beginning. Chapter 5:10. Chen Guang clenched his teeth thinking, it must be the heavenly holy grail purposely made me move to Lady Island, purposely tricked me into this water, purposely created such a high cost, just to make me return to before liberation in a second. Don't spout nonsense, it was not the heavenly holy grail. At this moment, Azure's voice rang in his mind. Who is so shameless, despicable, perverted, vulgar, and inhumane? I am going against his 18 generations of ancestors. Azure was silent for a very long time. It was me. Oh my God. Just now I was controlled by a soul from beyond the heavens. Stop pretending. When you come out I will give you a big surprise. I will let you properly raise your temperament in the instantaneous sea. You will sleep for 100 years. If you want to become the true master of the heavenly holy grail just lying down like this, isn't that too easy? Big sister, I was wrong. Please give me one more chance. Please accept my sincere repentance. Hee hee. Oh right, Azure, I have a question. You have also seen the situation in the instantaneous sea. Tell me, can I give all of them true life and souls? Just like my friends in the real world. Azure asked back, how do you know that your friends in the real world are true souls? How do you know that you are truly alive? Don't scare me. I am just joking, don't mind it. Let me tell you, the people in the momentary sea are different from you or your friend Lung Qin who accidentally entered here. Using your Eastern Chinese legends, they are 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls. They are missing 1 and 2 physical souls. Their souls are incomplete. So their so-called strength has no foundation. Like bubbles under the sun, they will never be able to break through the shackles of the instantaneous sea, unless what? Unless you, the owner of the transcending heaven holy grail, are willing to pay a certain price to raise the level of the realm of the transient sea to the same level as the real universe you are currently in. Then this entire world will be completed, and they will possess your so-called true life. Of course I am willing. That's not up to you. You're as weak as a chicken now. Wait until the day you complete all the trials of the world in the cup and save me, then you can think about it. Ignorant mortal, you don't know how difficult it is to create a real world. After Lu Li said this, there was no more movement. Chen Guang spread out his hands with an innocent look on his face. To put it bluntly, you're saying that I'm a noob? Do you have the ability to find another savior? When he returned to the surface of the sea, the missing corner of Leyte Island had disappeared forever on the way to the bottom of the sea. After the disaster, many things on the island had to be rebuilt. Chen Guang, on the other hand, was not in the mood to care about these things. After hesitating for a long time, he finally decided to let Bob announce the second business of Right Culture Communication Company. The Divination Holy Temple had officially opened for business. That's right, his current status was different from the past. Of course, he couldn't use the lowly name of a divination house anymore. Naming it the Holy Sanctum immediately made it seem lofty. Since he had already boasted that he was a prophet, other than the greater teleportation spell and the great sacred shield spell that he had bragged about previously, it was only right to add the so-called great divination spell. Lord Right, I have a good suggestion. Why don't we wait for the real holy temple to be built before we hang this plaque? The strange rocks from the deep sea that were knocked off the new statue can be used to build the holy temple. The effects will be very good. This place is too awkward now. Bob pointed at the divination holy temple that occupied an area of less than 3 square meters. There was only a canopy propped up by a stick, and the 4 words of calligraphy written by Chen Guang were hanging on the wall. After holding it in for a long time, he finally said this. Crossing his legs on the stool, Chen Guang patted the dining table that he had moved out of his mansion and calmly took a sip of his saliva. Bob, don't look down on this place. There's only a canopy, a dining table, and a stool. Actually, these are not important. The place where I, the prophet and sage Right, are at is the holy temple. Wherever I am, the holy temple will be. Bob's eyes lit up. He cupped his hands over his heart and said in a childish voice, "My lord is wise." Chen Guang smiled in satisfaction. Bob pointed to the side and asked, "Then, my lord, should I get someone to build a toilet holy temple at the side?" Chen Guang gave him a thumbs up. This fellow's perceptivity was really high. And the dining holy temple, the holy temple where you and Lady Annie had sex, if not for the fact that you are still a child, I would have definitely beaten you up. Chen Guang glared at Bob fiercely. Then, he took out the purple devil's fruit juice and poured a cup on the table. The bright sunlight that fell from the sky shone on the fruit juice, revealing a crystal-clear glow. It looked extremely enchanting and beautiful. A faint fragrance wafted out from the cup. Although it wasn't strong, it made one feel relaxed and happy after smelling it. Chen Guang looked down at Bob and smiled sinisterly. Go tell everyone that from today onwards, I, Right, will be staying in the Divination Holy Temple. I will use the magic of the prophet that I possess to help everyone fulfill their wishes. Come, drink this cup of Ganges River. Oh no, drink this cup of holy water of faith. Then, I will help you find anyone or anything you want to find. No matter where it is hidden, I will be able to find it in any corner of the sea of time. Bob was alarmed. That's amazing. My lord, give me a bucket. Chen Guang glared at him and drank some water. Then, he said heavily, of course, this magic is powerful, but the price is not cheap. After drinking it, you will lose the ability to speak forever. My lord, you took the wrong cup. Awala guli pala kacha kacha ka ka ka. Half an hour later, after wasting 100 billion points of faith, Chen Guang finally managed to save his tongue. With his head covered in cold sweat, he smiled at Bob. See that? I'm not joking. I'm telling you, Bob, that this holy water of faith is really terrifying. Thank the heavens, the production of faith had increased in the past few days. Otherwise, he would not have been able to sustain the expenditure of 100 billion points. As for where the growth was, Tintin indicated that the Buddha said, I can't say. Chen Guang did not expect that his first guest would be Annie. My dear bed leader, oh no, Captain, we can discuss this in private, but I really cannot give you this water. Who are you looking for? Must I? If not, I can get Dolly to drink it on my behalf. Qin Guang rejected decisively. The Dolly that Qin Guang was referring to was a famous chatterbox on Annie, the kind that irritated people. Annie shook her head. No, this is my own matter. Don't torture Dolly. I want to find that traitor, Jack, and tear him to pieces. This? I still don't know what happened between you and him back then. Chen Guang was very surprised. He did not expect Annie to hate Jack Sparrow so much. He took away all the souvenirs you left me back then. Annie said angrily. Chen Guang was at a loss. Souvenirs? Annie nodded and moved closer to Chen Guang's ear. She gritted her teeth and whispered, yes. Jack Sparrow is as cunning as a fox. He knows that the biggest secret that allowed us to not die on in Royal is related to you. So, he took away all the clothes you have ever worn, your saber, everything you have. Including your underwear. When he escaped, he jumped into the sea wearing all your clothes. I seriously suspect that all 7 of your underwear were worn by him. Chen Guang was furious. This is indeed unforgivable. Chapter 511. After spending a lot of effort, Chen Guang was finally able to temporarily settle Annie down. Soon, Chen Guang had to face the second guest that made things difficult for him, Brooke. Sir Wright, I want to ask you to help me find Captain Luffy. I just want to know if they are still alive. Brooke looked straight at Devil Juice and said in a pious tone. Chen Guang was reluctant to let him drink this thing. Brooke was one of his right-hand men. But this request seemed impossible to refuse. Brooke, besides the common language, do you know any other language? Chen Guang asked. The common language he spoke was medieval English. Brooke shook his head. Oh. Chen Guang grinned and asked Bob to bring over the newly made leaflet. Sorry, divination must use the most solid belief in your heart to find what you want to see the most. The function of this cup of holy water is to extract the obsession in your heart and pour it into the divination. The price is to take away your ability to use language. But because of me, I mistakenly drank a cup just now. Now it no longer needs the common language, so it is useless for you to drink it. Chen Guang made up nonsense in any case, only he himself understood, so he could say whatever he wanted. He also had no choice. He couldn't let others know that this was all nonsense just because Brooke and the others wanted to participate in divination. He didn't need to drink the juice to find what he wanted to find. There is no wall in the world that doesn't have a crack. Chen Guang must make himself maintain a certain sense of mystery in the sea of transient. So far, his performance was different enough. If he exposed more things, in case Brooke or Annie discovered his true secret, there would be a huge risk of losing the faith of everyone in the sea of transient. Although the secret that the Eternal Hand was still alive was temporarily hidden in the heart of Brooke and Watson, but it was clear that in the long history of the sea of transient, there has never been a lack of strong people who used their lives and faith to explore the truth. This was like the wheel of history, unstoppable. With an extremely long history and a population of 178 billion people, there would always be a continuous emergence of amazing experts. They had experienced a life full of opportunities and risks, step by step reaching the peak, and finally embarked on the path of seeking the truth. The era 2 to 3,000 years ago belonged to Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates. In the current era, there was Brooke, Annie Polly, Blackbeard Teach, and the rapidly rising Jack Sparrow. Who knew how many strong people would appear in the next era? Of course, Chen Guang, their imaginary enemy, was not afraid of these people's efforts and struggles. He even cheered for them in his heart and personally participated in it, contributing his strength. Of course, Chen Guang was not cultivating enemies for himself, but he knew that these people's resistance would never succeed. The only one who could truly change the world was Chen Guang himself. However, it was precisely because Chen Guang could see their despair that he admired their persistence. As for now, for the time being, let them live in this idea that they knew a little bit, but couldn't see through it. Brooke was very disappointed, but Watson suddenly stood up from the side. Sir, I can speak a total of 7 languages. Let me drink the holy water of faith, and let me fulfill Lord Brooke's wish." Brooke waved his hand. "No." Watson turned his head and stubbornly looked at Brooke. "Lord Brooke, I have followed you for hundreds of years. I know your heart's desire. For me, not being able to speak is nothing. As long as I can continue to follow Lord Brooke, my life has meaning. Fulfilling Lord Brooke's wish is my, Watson's, obsession." Without waiting for Brooke to speak again, Watson fiercely picked up the cup on the table and ferociously gulped it down. "Watson." Brooke couldn't say anything else. Chen Guang slightly nodded, put a box on the table, and then said, "Watson, in your heart, desperately think of what you want to see the most, and then look inside." Divination ball, no, perhaps it should be called a telescope, was embedded in this wooden box by Chen Guang, and the eyepiece was embedded in the hole, resembling a kaleidoscope. As for the obsession in Watson's heart, it was pure nonsense. The only one who could really influence the scene in the telescope was Chen Guang himself. What he wanted others to see, others could see. After a long time, Watson turned around with a flushed face. It was obvious that his mood was extremely agitated. Ululululu. He couldn't speak. But it didn't matter, he could still write. Brooke pulled Watson far away. He didn't want Watson to speak of this matter in public. Chen Guang watched the two leave at this time. His heart was also quite moved. The same scene not only appeared in the telescope, but also appeared in Chen Guang's heart. Luffy and his party didn't die. They broke through all obstacles, and after resurrecting again and again, relying on the bonds between companions and their formidable individual strength, they gathered together again and again. At this time, they were living on a certain floating island at the end of the Sea of Time. Next to this floating island was the legendary transparent barrier that could never be broken, which was also the side wall of Chen Guang's cup. Apart from this, the so-called eternal hand had already disappeared. In fact, it didn't really disappear, but at this time, Chen Guang was holding the cup and drinking water in the outside world, and when people looked outside from the cup, they naturally couldn't see anything clearly. Compared to the people in the Sea of Time, Chen Guang's eternal hand was really too huge. Vaster than the sea, vaster than the sky, the naked eye of mortals simply couldn't distinguish this hand from the heaven and earth. If it was still like before, with enough distance between the hand and the cup, it could still be barely distinguished, but now, there was nothing that could be done. In addition, Watson had mastered a total of 7 languages including Spanish, Portuguese, German, and so on. Under the effect of the devil juice, they were naturally transferred to Chen Guang's mind. There were a total of tens of thousands of residents on Leyte Island, among which, there were only a few who were as knowledgeable as Watson and knew many languages. In addition, not everyone had the belief that they must find someone. In addition, for the language that he had already mastered, no matter how firm the other party's desire was, Chen Guang wouldn't agree to perform great divination for him. The reason was very sufficient. Although your belief is very devout, perhaps fate has not come yet. You can't get the response of the great divination, it will no longer accept your language. I deeply sympathize with your experience, but I can't help you even if I want to. This isn't God's punishment, but God's guidance. God is telling you that you should forget about the burden of the past and face the future with a more optimistic attitude. After a busy day, at least thousands of people came to try because of their obsession. The situation was better than expected. Chen Guang performed great divination on about 400 people and very easily completed the learning of 676 languages. Of course, the biggest reason for this was that there were many people on Leyte Island who were experts selected from all over the Sea of Time to cultivate. They came from the 5 big seas and the more remote outer seas, so it was reasonable that they had a wide variety of languages. However, Chen Guang wasn't too excited. The smooth start was completely within his expectations. The truly difficult part was still the various super small languages that followed. At night, when he returned to the mansion, Annie was already sitting on the table in her armor, waiting for him. "My dear, please help me find that shameful traitor, Jack Sparrow." Annie smiled, but she couldn't stop the black gas from spreading out from her body. It was very obvious that she was furious when she thought of old Jack. Helpless, Chen Guang poured out a glass of fruit juice and was about to drink it himself. Annie hurriedly stopped him. However, Chen Guang waved his hand and said, "It's fine, I'm a prophet. I can deal with the aftereffects of the great divination." He didn't want to admit it, but the truth was that even though the price of drinking the devil's fruit juice was very high, the taste of this thing was not to be underestimated. There was a touch of coolness when it entered the mouth, and when it went down the stomach, it could be iced down the throat all the way to the stomach. His mouth was filled with a delicate fragrance, and the aftertaste was endless. The cool sweetness mixed with the pure sourness was simply the most delicious drink in the world. As a knowledgeable person who had tasted countless cola, orange juice, Fanta, Sprite, Rising Sun, Wanglaji, Hekizeng, Nutrition Express, and many other drinks in modern society, Chen Guang felt that the taste of these things couldn't even compare to 1/10,000th of the old man's devil's fruit juice. The devil's fruit juice had a devil-like allure, and one would immediately become addicted after drinking it by mistake. "I can't take it anymore, I'm addicted. Let me take another sip." Unlike others who couldn't speak after drinking it, Chen Guang felt that he could constantly save himself. After drinking it, he pretended to pounce in front of the divination telescope and stared into it. Chen Guang had long known that old Jack had an evil streak in him. He was greedy and selfish, quick-witted and cunning. He was unruly and crafty. Back on the Enroyal, he was used to using a large knife to shave his beard, pretending to be boorish to fool others. But no one hated him, because under his countless flaws, he still had a pure soul. He was once a military officer on Middle-earth, commanding a fleet. But later, because he couldn't stand seeing the nobles of Middle-earth trampling on the slaves, he released a ship full of slaves that he was supposed to be escorting. Later on, he was wanted by the nobles and eventually became a pirate. He had a mischievous personality, but he wasn't a bad person, and he was strong. Of course, if he had directly told Annie that he wanted to leave the Enroyal to start his own business, Annie might not have stopped him. However, he had set his sights on Chen Guang's personal belongings and had taken away the second combat team. This made Annie furious. As the scenery in the binoculars rapidly shifted, Chen Guang's gaze followed it, and gradually, the pitch-black surface of the ocean was covered in specks of light. Chen Guang's vision quickly zoomed in, and he saw a large fleet of ships mixed together on the surface of the sea. Upon seeing this scene, Chen Guang's pupils constricted slightly. The sounds of cannons, gunpowder gunfire, metal clashing of swords, and roars seemed to travel through time and space to reach Chen Guang's ears. The scene continued zooming in, and on the deck of every ship, he could see a frenzied battle. Blood was splattered all over the deck, and there were broken limbs everywhere. Who was Jack Sparrow exchanging fire with? Chen Guang frowned slightly and continued zooming in, but his mind recalled a scene from a long time ago. Right, sooner or later I'll have my own ship. I'll paint the entire ship a beautiful black. This will make me appear dignified. Under the clear and cold moonlight, the sea sparkled. A light breeze gently blew against the sails, producing a hoo-hoo sound. Old Jack sat on the railing of the Royal and, ferociously gulping down a mouthful of wine. Then, he tossed the empty cowhide bag into the water as he spoke. "Old Jack, you don't have many years left. Don't think about this." Chen Guang sat on a large wooden barrel beside him, tearing a roasted chicken leg in his mouth. "You don't understand, right? I have a premonition that I'm not an ordinary person. I won't die so easily. All right, if one day you can really get your own ship, I'll help you think of a great name. Didn't you want black paint? Why don't we call it the Black Pearl?" Chen Guang chuckled. Unexpectedly, old Jack was very satisfied. "Oh, my right, you're really a genius. This name is really great. The Pearl of the Sea, a Black Pearl. I want to load my Black Pearl with the most powerful cannons. I also need to find sails blessed by the sea god, and then replace them with keels made from the spine of the most powerful sea beasts. How about it? My idea isn't bad, right? Why don't you find a lake of immortality to soak your ship, so that your ship's hull will never be damaged?" Chen Guang continued to tease him. Unexpectedly, old Jack was fascinated. "Is that so? In this endless sea, is there really a spring of immortality? Then I'll have to drink my fill first before soaking the ship. At present, Chen Guang was looking at such a black pearl. Under the moonlight and firelight, the pitch-black hull of the ship emitted a demonic radiance. Amidst the intense crossfire, the gigantic sails were unceasingly struck by bullets and cannons. Yet, the firepower strangely passed through the sails, leaving the sails unscathed. Instead, the area struck by the firepower transformed into black mist. Indeed, this was augmented by black magic, or perhaps, the sails blessed by the sea god. The gigantic black pearl nimbly maneuvered its body. Only by combining the best helmsman and black magic could the gigantic ship display such nimble movements on the sea. This was the mighty Black Pearl. However, its opponent similarly couldn't be underestimated. It was a gigantic golden ship inlaid with a dragon head ram. Its entire body was actually forged from metal, yet the radiance it emitted wasn't a simple metallic luster. It should be augmented by some kind of magic. Both parties unleashed their full strength, colliding and bombarding each other frantically on the sea surface. Every collision would emit an ear-piercing screech and raise massive waves. The cannons of the gigantic golden ship seemed to be more advanced, and its firepower density far surpassed that of the Black Pearl. Nevertheless, the Black Pearl was more nimble. Augmented by black magic, its wooden hull allowed it to fight equally with its opponent. The distance between them was pulled closer once again. Finally, through a brief flickering of firelight, Chen Guang could clearly see the pirate flag on the sail of the gigantic golden ship. Shit! It was a simple drawing of the old man's handsome face. It was Leng Qin and her Radiance pirates. The unlucky Jack was battling Leng Qin. As expected, in the darkness, two figures flew out from the watchtowers on their respective masts. They crossed a distance of several hundred meters and collided fiercely in midair, creating a sound that was even more deafening than the sound of cannon fire. The goateed Jack Sparrow was sent flying backwards. In his hand was the broadsword that Chen Guang had been gripping ever since he met him. On the other side was the one-armed, one-eyed Leng Qin. At present, the iron hook embedded into her severed arm was swallowing and emitting a bizarre chilling glow. Her metallic artificial limb had been modified into a sharp cone shape. Chapter 5:12. Seeing Leng Qin's appearance, Chen Guang was puzzled. It had been 100 years since he entered the Sea of Moments. Logically speaking, Leng Qin should have been reborn at least once. When she first appeared here, she was crippled. At that time, Chen Guang did not think much about it. Later on, when he thought about it, he felt that it was strange. After all, Leng Qin could not have entered with her body, but with her soul. Since that was the case, why was she still crippled? Now she should have been reborn once, but her body was still incomplete. This didn't make sense. Could it be that she was the same as me and had an immortal body in the Sea of Moments? The more Chen Guang thought about it, the more he felt that it was highly possible. Using Laurie's words, the people in the Sea of Moments, under the special rules, had their souls incomplete. But Leng Qin was the same as him, having a complete soul compared to others. Thus, it was not hard to explain why Leng Qin did not age in the Sea of Moments. Forget it, let's not care about this for now and quickly go catch her. Annie, I found Jack. Chen Guang turned and said to Annie. Annie stood up. Where? I'll set off now. Darling, wait for me for a few years, I'll catch that old bastard. Chen Guang smiled. It's not that troublesome. Give me a minute. The war between the Radiance pirates and the Black Pearl pirates was still ongoing. Both sides suffered losses, but overall, Leng Qin held the advantage. Whether it was the strength of the pirates under her banner or individual strength, Leng Qin and her Radiance pirates were slightly stronger than Jack Sparrow. Madame Cord, why is this? I've never seen you before, nor provoked you. Why did you suddenly declare war on me? Has your arrogance reached such a level? Even if I lose today, I will make a comeback. You will pay the price for your arrogance. Old Jack stood on the mast of his Black Pearl, roaring fiercely. He had a perplexed look on his face. In the Sea of Moments, although it was common for big fish to eat small fish, but I'm not a small fish. I'm one of the 28 ocean emperors like you. You're bullying me too much. Lung Qin looked at him from afar, her expression cold. Jack Sparrow, do you think I don't know that you snuck up to my ship in the evening? Although I don't know what you're coveting, your provocation is enough to make me wary. I, Cod, am used to striking first. Old Jack wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Although the two of them were both ranked as one of the 28 ocean emperors, the transient sea was simply too vast. The chances of them meeting each other by chance were extremely small. Previously, the two factions had never interacted with each other. In the afternoon, the two fleets finally met on the surface of the sea and brushed past each other. At that time, he only glanced at the sail of the Radiant pirate group from afar. He did not look too closely, but afterward he felt that the pirate flag on the sail was very familiar. Later, he couldn't hold back his curiosity, so he stealthily turned the fleet around and dived into the sea to take a closer look. He didn't expect to be discovered. Ms. Cord, please believe me. I mean no harm. Old Jack knew that no one would believe his explanation. Even he himself felt that it was absurd. Back then, he had seen Leet turn into nothingness in midair with his own eyes. How could he see that kid's portrait on the flag of another rising pirate force? There's no point in saying more. Jack Sparrow, go and be reborn with a heart full of regret. More than 100 years of fighting on the sea had made Lung Qin, who was born in modern society and had experienced the influence of the new era. However, her life was full of misfortune. In the end, she died in despair but was strangely resurrected in the transient sea. She had become unprecedentedly powerful. In the past 100 years, she had used this decisive style to rapidly increase her personal strength, leading her Radiant pirate group to rise like a comet. In fact, Lung Qin herself didn't know what she wanted. Perhaps only by constantly fighting like this could she gradually feel that she was still alive. But from time to time, Lung Qin would see the people around her slowly grow old and eventually return to the sea. Those loyal and powerful crew members could return to their warships when they were a few years old, a dozen years old, or even a little older. They called this an undying rank expert. But she herself was forever young, and her body was still incomplete. Lung Qin's heart was very complicated and tangled. She would often think that there was no meaning in living like this, other than continuously becoming stronger and leading this group of loyal subordinates on expeditions. As a modern woman, her life seemed to be quite boring. Just as the battle between the two sides was about to enter a white-hot stage, a deafening sound suddenly rang out from the side of the sea. Everyone in the battlefield was deafened by this loud sound. The intense tremors caused Jack Sparrow, who was holding onto his blade and advancing forward, to stagger and almost fall down. Lung Qin held onto the mast tightly. She didn't know what was happening, but the power behind this terrifying tremor made her feel terrified. One of the 5 overlords had come to mediate? There was no reason for that. Even an overlord wouldn't be this powerful. This was the might of the world. In the blink of an eye, a huge wave came gushing over, stirring up the seawater. The warships of the two pirate groups were like leaves struggling in the middle of a raging storm. Both sides couldn't be bothered to continue fighting. Rays of black magic light lit up one after another, and they finally managed to resist the impact of this sudden huge wave. Under the moonlight, a white silhouette that was like a mountain gradually appeared, getting closer and closer. The white silhouette's light rapidly converged, but it turned into a huge black silhouette under the moonlight, giving the two pirate groups a suffocating pressure. Lung Qin opened her mouth slightly. Oh my God, this is a floating island. As an outsider, she might not understand the significance of a floating island, but Jack Sparrow did. The impact he received was even more intense. Oh my God of the sea! How can someone control a floating island? And it's so huge. Even though the floating islands in the Sea of Moments were only floating on the surface of the water, because of the mysterious sea god's might, every floating island was exceptionally stable and extremely difficult to move. Moving a huge island with a diameter of 10 kilometers had long surpassed the limits of the strongest overlord in the Sea of Moments. It also exceeded Jack Sparrow's common sense. Finally, the black silhouette gradually approached, and a few small boats rushed out from the floating island. Jack Sparrow's face was ashen. What kind of terrifying force was the other party? Could it be that an existence above the Overlord had appeared in the sea? Old Jack am done for. Bastard Jack, you're dead. Just as old Jack was thinking about this, a stern shout came from one of the boats that had rushed out, causing him to shiver all over. Damn it. Annie. Mamma mia. I'm really done for. Jack Sparrow's legs went soft, and he screamed as he jumped down from the Black Pearl's mast, falling head first into the sea. He couldn't care less, he had to run first. As a traitor, old Jack had always hidden as far as he could from the Royal Pirate Group. After hiding for over 100 years, you actually drove a floating island to catch up to us today. How can I stand against you? Trying to run? Annie snorted coldly, and suddenly jumped out from the small boat. The tip of her foot stepped on the surface of the sea, and she shot out like lightning. Black gas surged from her body, and she roared forward like a black dragon. Her speed was so fast that it made people's hair stand on end. This time, old Jack looked like he couldn't escape this calamity. An Overlord rank wasn't just a little stronger than an Ocean Emperor rank. Chen Guang wasn't in a hurry to follow. Don't be fooled by Annie's violent rage. In fact, Chen Guang knew that she would definitely be soft-hearted. But it didn't matter, old Jack's mistake wasn't worthy of death. He could still be taught a lesson. Not paying attention to Annie's movements in pursuit of old Jack, Chen Guang and Brooke steered the small boat towards Lung Qin's ship. Lung Qin looked at the gradually approaching small boat, her face bewildered. She was hesitating whether she should take the initiative to attack, but of the two people standing on the small boat, the taller one gave her too much pressure, making her extremely fearful. She knew Annie's name. Rumor had it that she had stayed on the Sage's Island for the past 100 years, which was also known as Right Island. Today, Right Island had undoubtedly become the most powerful force in the entire Sea of Time's 5 seas. It had 2 Overlord rank powerhouses, including Buldev and other famous Ocean Emperor rank powerhouses, as well as countless undead powerhouses. Annie had gone to capture Jack Sparrow, so this tall and skinny figure must be the other Overlord rank powerhouse, Brooke. Unrivaled. What was their purpose in coming here? Did they come to capture Jack Sparrow? Or did the secret of my immortality reach their ears? What kind of person was the rumored Sage Right? Generous? Benevolent? Or was it the greed and hypocrisy hidden beneath the surface? Or was it the explosive news that broke out in the last 2 days, that he possessed tyrannical abilities in bed that all women except Annie were unable to withstand? How powerful was he? Seeing the small boat getting closer and closer, Lung Qin's breathing became more and more rapid. When she finally saw the faces of the 2 people standing on the boat, her breathing suddenly stopped. Chen Guang. This thought exploded in her heart like thunder, and Lung Qin almost blurted out. Ever since she had inexplicably arrived here, Lung Qin's heart hid too many mysteries, but she had no one to narrate them to, and no one could give her an answer. But now Chen Guang had appeared. Meeting an old friend in a foreign land could make one's eyes brim with tears, but meeting an old friend in a different world could simply make one hysterical. At this moment, Lung Qin was feeling this way. She softly sat down on the deck, tears falling like rain, while in her heart she repeatedly mocked her own stupidity. She should have known that right was the meaning of light. Even if it was just out of curiosity, she should have gone to Right Island earlier to see what was going on. But it was precisely because she was a foreigner that she hid too many cowardly thoughts in her heart, and was unwilling to have too many interactions with other pirate forces, which led to today's brushing shoulders for 100 years. With Chen Guang's current reputation in the Sea of Time, it was naturally impossible for Lung Qin not to have heard of him. Even in her own bedroom, there was a phonograph with his music on it. But she thought it was just a coincidence, and at the same time she was afraid of the 2 prominent hegemons of Right Island. She was afraid that more people would know the secret of her immortality. After several struggles in her heart, she finally chose to turn a blind eye. Of course, later Chen Guang simply fell into a deep sleep, and Brooke announced to the public that the sage was in seclusion. Lung Qin knew that she wouldn't be able to see him even if she went, so she simply gave up on the idea. As for the letter that Qin Guang had written to her, she didn't know that it had long been lost in the belly of that sea beast. Now that he had finally come, Leng Qin felt that she had thousands of words to ask him. As a foreigner who had lived alone in this world for more than 100 years, even thinking of a cherry tree on earth would make her tear up, let alone Qin Guang who had saved her life. Lord Wright, do you need me to subdue her first? Miss Cord's reputation isn't very good, and she has a very bad temper. Brooke slightly bowed to Qin Guang and said. Since Qin Guang showed what's in the scene where Luffy and others were still alive, Brooke's respect for Qin Guang increased. Qin Guang shook his head. It's okay, Brooke, you stay here, she can't hurt me. With that, Qin Guang took a step forward. Brooke's eyes flashed, thinking, finally, I'm going to see Lord Wright display his hockey. Although everyone knew that Lord Wright, who was able to fight with Captain Annie for several hours, was very strong, but no one had ever seen him use hockey to walk on the waves. But Qin Guang dived into the water and swam forward like a fish. His speed was astonishing. Brooke covered his face. A sage, a dignified prophet, actually jumped into the water and swam over. If you had said so earlier, I would have carried you up. His prestige was swept to the ground. Miss Cord, can you please throw a rope down? After a long time, Leng Qin faintly said to the wet Qin Guang in front of her, I really didn't expect to meet you here. I thought I was just one of those cliched characters in novels who transmigrated after death, but now it seems that things aren't so simple. Qin Guang smiled and looked at Leng Qin for a long time. To be honest, I am also very surprised, but it's great that you are still alive. This shows that good people have good karma. In the end, Qin Guang didn't tell Leng Qin the truth about the instantaneous sea, and Leng Qin also refused Qin Guang's invitation to join Wright Island. Unlike Qin Guang who could leave at any time, Leng Qin couldn't leave this world, so she must hide the secret of not aging deeper. In this world, although she was powerful, she was more lonely than anyone else. In fact, she even lied to her own crew. Although her body didn't age, she would constantly think of ways to make herself look older as time passed. Moreover, she suddenly disappeared from her fleet 20 to 30 years ago, leaving behind a suicide note. After a dozen years, she dressed up very young and returned to the ship, creating the illusion that she had died once. In the Radiant pirate crew, she could maintain her prestige and no one would suspect her, but if she joined Wright Island, she would be exposed sooner or later. As for Leng Qin's future, Qin Guang also didn't know how to arrange it. She was an anomaly in the instantaneous sea, with a soul similar to his and not aging, but she didn't have the identity and status of a true master of the whole world like him. The two didn't even talk for long. When Qin Guang told Leng Qin that he would leave the instantaneous sea sooner or later and return to reality, Leng Qin planned to quickly leave. In the real world, she had already become a box of ashes, and the current Qin Guang had no way to bring her out. No matter what, live on bravely and strongly. Standing in front of you is a man with unlimited possibilities. In the future, sooner or later, I will be able to let your husband and your child appear in front of you again. Before the two of them said their goodbyes, Qin Guang left behind the most important promise he had made so far. Leng Qin, who was standing at the stern of the ship, turned around and smiled. Thank you. With these words of yours, I can live for another 100 million years. Chapter 5:13. Oh, old Jack, your current appearance reminds me of a roasted pig. Watching Jack Sparrow being beaten into a ball of lightning by Annie, Qin Guang felt sympathy for him. Jack Sparrow sat cross-legged on the deck of the Black Pearl with a bruised and swollen face, smiling helplessly. Both sides didn't have any formal confrontation, and the Black Pearl pirates quickly surrendered under Annie's might. On one hand, Annie's Overlord-class strength made them powerless to resist. On the other hand, the majority of the Black Pearl pirates' backbone came from the second battle squad that defected with him. Seeing the old captain, Annie's legs turned to jelly, not to mention brandishing their swords. Annie was huffing and puffing with her hands on her hips, looking as though she didn't like Jack Sparrow. Little Winnie and Bart tried to calm Annie down. Right, I really didn't expect to see you again. Jack Sparrow's words were a little unclear. It was obvious that his teeth were almost all knocked out. Chen Guang spread his hands. I didn't expect it either. You look much younger than before. Jack Sparrow grinned. But you're as young as before. My dear Wright, if you continue to reminisce with him, I won't be able to bear to send him back to life. Annie came over and interrupted their conversation. Annie, you don't intend to give him a chance to defend himself? Chen Guang asked. Annie rolled her eyes. Go to his captain's room and you'll understand. With a puzzled mood, Chen Guang went to old Jack's captain's room for a stroll. When he walked out again, the others looked at him and covered their mouths as they laughed. On the other hand, Chen Guang was speechless. Damn it, old Jack actually framed all of his stuff and placed it in his captain's cabin like a museum. This guy actually attached a description below every item. Wright's first pair of underwear, made with a mysterious cotton weaving technique. It has an astonishing level of comfort. It simply doesn't seem like it should be made in this world. Wright's third pair of underwear, bought from the Pass Island market, once left a mark on Wright's life, you know. Chen Guang threw a rope onto the mast and coiled it up. I think we should hang this idiot Jack now. He really didn't know what to say to this unscrupulous guy. Then little Winnie, Bart and a large group of people all pleaded for Jack's life. Chen Guang, reluctantly, spared Jack's death sentence, but he personally tied Jack to the mast as a punishment. Right, do you have time tonight to drink with me? Jack grinned, without the slightest self-awareness of being a captive. Look at me. Do I look like I'm joking with you? Chen Guang purposely put on a stern expression. Jack still didn't care. Among everyone, Leet, you know me the best, and I know you the best, so I know you definitely won't hurt me. If Captain Annie hadn't come to Leyte Island first, I would have come to you 100 years ago. I have a lot to tell you. I also have some questions to ask you. Chen Guang looked at the laughing Jack Sparrow with a burning gaze. From this fellow's eyes, he could read a lot of special charm. In fact, Chen Guang was also very curious in his heart. Just like the greatness of Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates, this hero of Pirates of the Caribbean that he personally created, what kind of existence would he become in the special world of the Sea of Time? At this time, Jack Sparrow looked exactly the same as the protagonist of the movie in Chen Guang's memory. His face was as sharp as a knife, his slightly tanned skin, his beautiful handlebar mustache, his unkempt hair wrapped under a red headscarf, and even the X-shaped scar on his right cheek was exactly the same as in the movie. He looked exactly the same as Johnny Depp in the real world. The last time he saw him, he was old. At that time, Chen Guang only vaguely felt that this guy was a bit similar to Jack Sparrow in the movie. Now that he saw the middle-aged Jack who was about 40 years old, Chen Guang's thoughts were completely confirmed. If he was the owner of the Momentary Sea World, then Jack Sparrow would be half the main character of the Momentary Sea World. The other half was naturally the Straw Hat Pirates. Today, the Straw Hat Pirates lived in seclusion at the border of the Sea of Time, and Jack Sparrow was a rising star in the 5 seas. This guy should be the man who was truly favored by the Sea of Time. Of course, Chen Guang himself was the man who ruled the Sea of Time. So, right, let's talk at night? Okay. Then why don't you leave here? Why is Mr. Brooks still on the ship? Don't you need to go back to the island to eat? It's incredible. How did you move the island here? If there's a chance in the future, I will learn this trick from you. Oh no, my dear Wright, why are you looking at me like that? Do you suspect that I will run away? I, Jack Sparrow, am a responsible man. Believe me, even if you ask me to jump into the water now, I will only help you catch fish. Chen Guang only replied with 2 words. He. In the end, Annie did not tear Jack into pieces as she said. She was just angry that all of Chen Guang's souvenirs were taken away. After beating this guy half to death, the anger in her heart was appeased. When Jack left without saying goodbye, although it was heartbreaking, he did not become an enemy of the Enroyal. On the contrary, from time to time, he used his own channels to quietly send information to Winnie Jr. and Bartu, helping Annie through many difficulties. It was just that the 2 sides could not put down their pride, so they did not reach a reconciliation. Just like now, Annie had actually forgiven him, but on the surface, she still looked like she did not want to see him. In fact, she had already returned to the island, letting Jack Sparrow do whatever he wanted. Her meaning was very clear. If you still want to leave, then you really can leave at any time. Regarding Annie's decision, Chen Guang was non-committal. This guy, Jack, was destined to be the protagonist. His legend had just begun. It was impossible for him to die in Annie's hands. Even if he was chopped into minced meat, it would not prevent his soul from resurrecting somewhere else. Apart from that, Chen Guang sensed an extremely tyrannical life force from this guy, even more tyrannical than the overlord-class experts like Annie and Brooke. Furthermore, his ship was also very special. The Black Pearl had clearly suffered considerable damage from the exchange of gunfire with Lung Qin. Yet after less than half an hour, the pitch-black hull of the ship had soundlessly regenerated to its original state. He really found the fountain of youth. Time seemed to have returned to that night many years ago. Chen Guang sat under the mast, throwing a plump chicken leg up. Jack accurately caught it with his mouth, then vaguely said, "You have to let go of my hand. How can I chew a chicken leg with only my mouth?" "Don't struggle, I know you too well. As long as there is a little chance, you will slip away and disappear without a trace. Because you have a secret." The one drinking became Chen Guang. Jack bit the entire chicken leg into his mouth, his tongue frantically stirring. After a short while, he actually used his toothless mouth to eat it cleanly, and spat out the bones on the deck. "Don't you also have a secret?" Chen Guang stood up, making sure that the distant Baldev couldn't hear his whisper, then softly said, "But you shouldn't covet my secret. Tell me, how did you think of taking away my clothes and sword?" "You finally admitted it." Jack laughed mischievously. "Right, I know, we are both very special people. I always felt that I was special enough, until I met you. If you really want to ask me why, I can't tell you. Intuition, I can only tell you, intuition, from the first time I saw you, I knew you were special. You know, I fled from Middle-earth to the Jade Sea, so I understood that there are undying experts in this world. I am very clear about how powerful an undying expert is, and how difficult it is to comprehend hockey. However, during the half a year when you were with us on the Enroyal, I clearly felt that my body, my soul, everything about me were changing bit by bit. Under the circumstances where we didn't comprehend hockey, we actually obtained an undying soul. This is simply illogical. This isn't just one or two people, but everyone on the Enroyal. Then you suddenly left, catching all of us off guard. Now you're back, and you've opened the era of the strong. Do you know, I was originally stuck below the Sea Emperor rank for a whole 10 years, but just by hearing your name again, I inexplicably became a Sea Emperor rank expert. Right? What kind of magic do you have?" Under the moonlight, Jack Sparrow, who was suspended in midair, looked at Chen Guang with a scrutinizing gaze. Chen Guang was slightly surprised. He raised his head to look at this guy, thinking to himself, as expected of the main character's life, this cunning and sharp guy. While the others were completely unaware, he was able to detect the changes. "Since you want to understand me better, you should stay by Annie's side, and not defect, Jack." After a brief silence, Chen Guang grinned. Jack shook his head. "No, if I continue to stay on the Enroyal, I may have become as strong as Annie, but I can't have eternal life. You can't be eternal now, even though you obtained the Fountain of Youth. I knew I couldn't hide this from you." Jack sighed. "Yes, the Fountain of Youth is a lie. I'm still aging day by day, just a little slower. But I still have to die and be reborn like everyone else. Sooner or later, I'll lose everything like everyone else. Isn't this the fate of everyone in the Sea of Moments? Why do you think you can escape this fate?" "Because I am Jack, because I have a reason to live." Jack Sparrow's emotions suddenly became agitated. "I miss my lover, Rose. She was only an ordinary person, and she was cruelly killed. But I know she's still alive, waiting for me somewhere. As long as I keep searching, I'll find her sooner or later." Chen Guang was shocked, but he forcefully suppressed his emotions. "But ordinary people don't have an immortal soul." Jack shook his head. "No, everyone in the Sea of Moments is immortal." Perhaps many years later, people would know that Jack Sparrow's words were on par with the Eternal Hand's master's life. They were the two greatest secrets of the Sea of Moments. Chen Guang simply could not understand. Jack Sparrow's judgment was completely baseless. Because of the connection of souls, the appearance of a person after resurrection would be at least 80 to 90% similar to their previous life's appearance. However, the population of the entire transient sea was too large. Finding two people who looked exactly the same out of 178 billion people wasn't difficult at all. Even if an undying rank expert met a dead person, they would not be able to find any past memories from their conversation. When a person's soul was cleared and they grew up again, they would experience a completely different life from their previous life. There was no reason to say that they were still the same person. If the steel used to make the kitchen knife was smelted again and then made into another kitchen knife, it could not be considered the same knife. Only Chen Guang himself, the master of the Sea of Moments, could clearly see the changes from a bystander's point of view. He could not understand how Jack Sparrow could see through this matter. Right, looking at your expression, I know that I guessed correctly. Jack Sparrow said with a smile. He was very proud of himself. Chen Guang could not help but curse. Needless to say, Jack Sparrow, who had only been revived once, could not possibly have the knowledge of Gol Roger or Magellan. Unlike others who had used generations of hard work to discover the mysteries of the eternal hand, this guy was able to see through the mysteries of the heavens with a single sentence. He relied on his unlucky intuition, which he had shown off more than once. King want to defy the heavens. Chen Guang gritted his teeth. I won't give you an answer. It doesn't matter. This only strengthens my confidence to travel the entire ocean and find Rose. She is just an ordinary person. There is no need for you to do this. No, right, you don't understand love. I am willing to die for her. I am even more willing to live for her. Chen Guang felt very unhappy. As a hidden boss, he had actually shocked a doll time and time again. Now he was even mocked by him. This was intolerable. He rolled his eyes and shouted into the distance, Bob, get Bob to bring me the Divination Temple's leaflet. Jack, you might not know about the new business that Wright Island recently launched. I think you will be very interested in it. Chen Guang smiled evilly. Aren't you capable? Aren't your intuition defying the heavens? Aren't you going to use your entire life to find your lover? You want to live forever to find your woman. I can understand that. After all, to find a woman in the vast Shuzhou Sea amongst the 170 billion people, the difficulty was simply unimaginable. However, the old man had a telescope. I will help you find her. I will do it now. You have no goal in life. Let's see how you can still be so noble. Let's see how you can pursue eternal life. In front of a true big boss like the old man, your main character life is still not tough enough. Chen Guang's mischievous soul was burning. A moment later, Jack Sparrow listened to Chen Guang personally read the Divination Temple's leaflet. His expression changed. How is it? Are you interested? You just can't speak. As long as you have my help, your rose will be at your fingertips. If I remember correctly, you know a very obscure Hebrew dialect. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be qualified to enjoy this incredible divination. Chen Guang used a devilish tone to tempt him. He shook the devil juice that Bob had brought over. Beside him was his divination box. Unexpectedly, a moment later, Jack Sparrow suddenly shook his head. No, I refuse. Chen Guang's smile gradually faded. Reason? Intuition. You think I would lie to you? Would I purposely find a woman who was not Rose, but someone who looked like her to fool you? After all, without an immortal soul, no one can retain their memory. So, are you afraid that you can't see through my scam? No, you are my friend. I believe you. But my intuition tells me that I have to do it myself. I will always believe in my intuition and never go against it. My intuition also tells me that you want my Hebrew. So, I can drink your holy water of faith. This will be my punishment for stealing Annie's things. But I refuse your help. The atmosphere instantly became particularly solemn. From this guy, Chen Guang really saw infinite possibilities. Putting away the thought of teasing him, Chen Guang's expression became unprecedentedly solemn. He loosened the rope that bound Jack Sparrow and said, "Thank you, Jack. You taught me a lesson. I allow you to leave, but I suggest you talk to Brooke before you go. Although I can tell you with certainty that no matter how hard you work, you will not get the freedom you want. I hope you will never give up. So, will we have a chance to meet again? Jack Sparrow realized something. Chen Guang thought for a moment. We will definitely meet again. Chapter 5:14. Damn it. That bastard. He stole my cotton underwear. The one I changed out of last night. That damn pervert. The next morning, Jack Sparrow left without saying goodbye once again. This time, Annie had experience and hid the loot from the captain's room under the bed, making sure that nothing would go wrong. But Chen Guang made a mistake. He only let Celine wash the clothes he changed out of yesterday and hang them outside the window. The next morning, everything else was still there, but the fresh underwear was gone. Annie laughed. It's fine, you're still here anyway, it's just a pair of underwear, don't be sad. Chen Guang waved his hand. No, Annie, you're a pure girl, you don't understand. Everyone has their own life, maybe exciting, maybe plain, maybe short, maybe long. With a population of 178 billion, there are 178 billion stories. In this huge world, everyone has their own life. Although Chen Guang claimed to be the master of the instantaneous sea, but in reality, he could not control everyone's life and death. He could not make someone disappear with just a thought, nor could he create a person out of thin air. Perhaps it was more appropriate to see him as the manager of the museum. He held the key in his hand, opening and closing the museum every day, but he could not decide the specific opening time, nor could he give the entire museum to someone or some organization, and even more could not decide which items to display today. He was only the manager, not the curator, and not the director of the Cultural Bureau. Of course, maybe one day in the future, he could be promoted to become the real curator, and even become the director of the Cultural Bureau who could make laws, say what is art, and what is art. But it was not now. The current Chen Guang had an illustrious status in the instantaneous sea. He was seen as a sage, and even more so as a prophet, and the two overlords under him represented the highest military power in the entire instantaneous sea. However, he himself had no intention of truly getting involved with the royal authority or the so-called divine authority of this world. He only brought his people and the island. Under the guise of comprehending life and improving his cultivation, he traveled around the Sea of Moments. Together with his Leyte Island, he visited one continent after another, visited one hidden race after another. Even if the other party was hidden in the deepest part of the 10,000 mountains, or on a floating island in the stormy sea that no one could pass through, Chen Guang could control his Leyte Island, appear near them out of thin air, and then take out his piano music, offer his divination temple, spread the glory of the sage prophet Leyte, and fulfill their wishes. In the long journey, he once saw a giant beast in the sea that was tens of kilometers long, and even Brooke and Annie had to join hands to defeat it. He also once encountered a terrifying storm that raised 100,000 feet tall wave, to the extent that he had no choice but to use the Great Divine Shield to protect the integrity of Leyte Island. He even met a hidden expert outside of the five overlords, and sat down and discussed with the other party. In the end, he peeped into the secrets in the depths of his heart, and at the price of helping him find the secret books that he had lost 10,000 years ago, he tricked him into taking away the 13 super small languages that he had mastered. Chen Guang went to the frost continent in the north, and under the great snowy mountain that had been frozen for 10,000 years, he sat around the fire and chatted with the lights, who had been hunting for generations. The adult lights were less than 1 meter tall, but their muscles hid astonishing strength. Their skin and hair were snow white, and they had wide palms and feet, allowing them to run like the wind on the surface of the snow. They were stubborn and self-enclosed, and they never came into contact with the outside world. Chen Guang spent 3 days, and finally dug out the deepest and truest wish of the Light's chief, and helped him find the artifact armor that the first chief of the Lights had left on the battlefield. He also obtained the dozens of Inuit dialects that he had mastered. However, the Lights were just a drop in the ocean in Chen Guang's long journey. Chen Guang also left an illustrious name on the Azure Dragon continent in the east, and with a famous work, that flew 3,000 feet straight down, he was conferred the title of Poetry Immortal on the continent where the Huaxia people lived in the Sea of Moments. He came to the sky blue continent, which was full of black people, and on a whim, he pulled Brooke and the other top experts to build a magnificent sphinx. He also left an enlarged version of Saint Christ on the Cape of the Ruba continent. He also left thousands of human-faced giant elephants on the floating island for the Fife people who worshipped human faces in the outer sea. Just as he promised everyone, he brought the people of Leyte Island and left their footprints all over the Sea of Moments. Rather than learning more languages, it would be better to say that he was constantly talking to others, listening to their stories, and understanding the vast and messy history of the Sea of Moments. At the same time, he also left behind some of his own history. Of course, there were people who succeeded in their studies on Leyte Island and returned home in glory. At the same time, there were also new geniuses who had the honor of entering this holy land from the shores of other continents and floating islands. A person's greatness was demonstrated through his contributions to the world. Poseidon changed the people of the Sea of Moments, Magellan opened the eyes of the people of this world for the first time, Columbus used his life to stare at the shackles in the sky, Gol Roger summarized history into a letter, the Straw Hat Pirates passed down the seeds of history, and now settled at the end of the world. Chen Guang believed that with the amazing historian Nico Robin, when Luffy and the others returned, they would definitely bring back more of the truth of the world. Today, Chen Guang used the name right to open a new era of experts, and he brought the 100 million years of bardic culture to great success. He even personally guided Bob to promote the effects of the functional shells. But his greatest contribution was not just this, it was to use a few decades to let everyone on Leyte Island walk the sea with him. He had broadened the horizons of these people and broadened their hearts. The wider a person's horizon was, the higher their heart was. The height of their heart determined the heights they would eventually reach. Even legendary pirates like Blackbeard Teach and Dutchman Davy could not resist the temptation of Leyte Island. They came to Leyte Island as apprentices, starting from the most basic gardener and becoming a normal resident of Leyte Island. In the end, Annie Polly was the first to step out of the realm of hegemons, pushing her strength to new heights. That day, Annie stood on the sea, her eyes closed and her arms outstretched. The waves beneath her feet turned into giant whales that were 10,000 meters long, bouncing with her emotions. The waves moved because of her, the storms rose because of her, the sky howled because of her, the sea beasts bowed to her. The Sea of Moments left people with more than just suppression. When a person's strength was recognized by the sea, then they would be recognized by the sea. This was a realm that Poseidon had never reached, a level of strength never seen before. Chen Guang had personally named this realm the Ruler Realm. That was because the current Annie Bowley could rule an entire ocean. 3 days later, Blackbeard Teach was pruning flowers and listening to music. He followed in Annie's footsteps and became a paragon. 7 days later, Jack Sparrow, hundreds of millions of kilometers away, spouted a monstrous lie to the sea. Sea of Moments, I am your most devout believer. No one can shake my faith in you. Why won't you let me control your power? Jack Sparrow, the shameless bastard, swindled a third paragon out of power. Since then, the 5 hegemons and the 28 Poseidons had become history. Chen Guang had used his own strength, and in less than 200 years, he had raised the power of the Sea of Moments by 2 levels. Even Chen Guang's most devout follower, the future ancestor of countless bootlickers, Bob, was speechless at Wright's greatness. He turned every single scholar into a mute so that these half-witted people would learn one thing: talk less and think more. Watson wrote this in his biographical novel, The Sage and the Prophet. Of course, Watson had written this book specifically for Chen Guang. Ever since he couldn't speak, the man's pen had grown sharper and sharper. He had the style of a modern Conan Doyle. Chen Guang's face reddened when he read the words. He patted Watson on the shoulder. Not bad, kid. If there is a day in the future when my name will be engraved into the monument of history, it will definitely be because I spent my entire life running around for Lord Wright. Bob didn't want to be outdone. In his field of expertise, he didn't want to lose to the mute Watson. Time flew, and Chen Guang reveled in the carefree life of roaming the seas. Relying on the piano god statue and piledriver god statue, he could collect 200 billion faith points every day. When he was bored, he would drag Annie to the floating palace at the bottom of the sea for 80,000 rounds. Such days were simply too blissful, too comfortable. Without the spiritual seal, living in an isolated space for a long time would naturally make one depressed and depressed. But now it was different. Chen Guang's journey was the entire sea of transient. He had a beautiful woman like Annie by his side, and also a skeleton musician like Brooke who would occasionally baffle his elders. Bob, who was always talkative but always able to help Chen Guang solve his problems. Little Winnie and Bartu, these old fellows, gradually became more cheerful and generous in front of Chen Guang. That's right, Baldev, who had hidden his secret for most of his life, was finally discovered by Bob on a full moon night. At that time, the 18-year-old Bob was showing off his newly developed rainbow shells to Chen Guang. As a result, under the bright moon, Bob's body hair suddenly sprouted like a sprout after a rain. His mouth gradually protruded forward, and his ears began to elongate. A few minutes later, a burly werewolf appeared in front of Chen Guang, puffing white smoke. Chen Guang and Bob were terrified. "My lord, do I look ugly now?" Bob asked in a sobbing tone. Chen Guang took a mirror from the side and said, "Not bad. You look pretty awesome." "That idiot Baldev is a werewolf. He passed the werewolf gene to me." Bob cried. Chen Guang was silent for a long time. "Bob, only a husky will bark." "Woof. My lord, I'm not a werewolf." At this time, Baldev seemed to have sensed the change in his son and appeared at the door. He was also covered in hair. Bob's face was covered in tears. "Damn it. Could it be that you are the ancient huskies? You've been calling me a wolf all your life, and now you're telling me you're a husky? If I didn't become your son, I would never know that you're hiding such a deep secret." Looking at the two huskies, Chen Guang felt sad for them and silently threw the plates on the table out of the window. "Son, we're humans. Don't catch the plates. Baldev, you idiot. You run faster than me." According to the husky tradition, if a son bites his father, he will be drowned in a pig cage. Did you just make up this unfortunate tradition? Watching the two huge huskies fighting on the grass outside the window, Chen Guang prayed for Bob in his heart. He hoped that he would not be reincarnated into Baldev's wife's belly in his next life. If it weren't for the 4,978 languages, Chen Guang would have thought his life was an eternity of bliss. Of course, life couldn't be all about happiness and contentment. The joys and sorrows had to be tasted together. Even as the master of the Sea of Moments, he couldn't stop time from leaving its mark on Annie's body. Even if Chen Guang found the fountain of youth for Annie, he couldn't stop the passage of time. Finally, when Annie, the first paragon of the Sea of Moments, was 90 years old, she couldn't stand her old self any longer. She appeared by Chen Guang's side, left a letter, and left on the N Royal. She forbade Chen Guang from looking for her. "I know, you always say I look 30. Yes, I age slower than most people. The fountain of youth has given me an immortal body, just like you. But I know. I'm old, I'm going to die soon. Wait for me for 18 years, okay?" 3 years later, Chen Guang held the newborn Annie in his arms, a wide grin on his face. Annie, on the other hand, rolled her eyes. They had agreed on 18 years, but this guy had been waiting near the place where she was born for so long. "My lord, you won't even let a baby go, will you?" Bob abruptly interjected. Chen Guang sucked in a breath of cold air. Annie, still a baby, silently extended a white finger. Black energy swirled around it, and in the blink of an eye, Bob was swept away by a gust of wind. Everyone was awed by Bob's courage and skill in courting death. But all good things must come to an end. Chen Guang knew he wouldn't be able to wait for Annie to grow up. In the past century, he'd traveled to tens of thousands of islands, several continents, and hundreds of thousands of people. He'd spoken 4,978 languages, but now he only had one left. "Annie, I might have to go." "For how long?" "I don't know." "Will you come back?" "Definitely. It's a pity that I couldn't leave a child for you, Annie, who was still a child, said. It's okay. There's still a long way to go. Our lives are still very, very long. For others, Chen Guang might not be able to help, or he might not be willing to pay such a huge price. But for some people, Chen Guang was willing to pay faith points to preserve their memories. This meant that even if their memories were to be erased in the long years, Chen Guang could still use faith points to help them restore their memories. This might be considered immortality to a certain extent. Chapter 5:15. Liuli, do you really think that there are people who can be eternal? Standing at the peak of Cloud City, Chen Guang asks. Liuli carefully sets up the last piece of wood on the wooden house. Below the wooden house is the deer cry flower, which only has half of its roots left. She raises her head to look at Chen Guang, who is high up in the sky, and grins. When you asked this question, I am very glad that you didn't waste your 200 years in the sea of time. But I have to correct you. There has never been anyone who can be eternal. Even the universe that you see has no eternity. Its seemingly endless lifespan will eventually come to an end. Then what is the end of the universe? Is it what modern scientists say, that the universe is constantly enlarging and will eventually return to eternal peace? Or is it another theory, that the universe is shrinking and the entire universe will fuse into a tiny elementary particle and complete a singularity explosion like fireworks? Chen Guang asks curiously. Liuli thinks for a moment and shakes her head. I can't answer this question of yours. Why? Because this is your universe. No, that's not right. Because every plane of existence is different. Even in this emperor's long lifespan, I have seen planes being destroyed more than once. But just like how you can never find two identical leaves on Earth, there are no two completely identical planes. In other words, even if two planes look almost exactly the same, one of them only has one more oxygen atom than the other that you understand, or one more electron. In the end, there will be a world of difference in the evolution of these two planes. As for your so-called eternity, from a human's point of view, a true God like me is eternal because my lifespan is so long that it exceeds the limits of human understanding. But from my point of view, what counts as eternity? This question, how can this old lady answer it? Why do you ask so many questions the moment you come out? You should change your name to 100,000 Wise. Facing the irascible Liuli, Chen Guang still wore a seer's warm smile. Today's me is no longer who I used to be. Because in the hundreds of years that I've been traveling the seas, I've heard too many stories and seen too many sceneries. I've crossed mountains and seas, and I've also passed through mountains and seas. I once stood at the top of the world, and my personality has become noble. I have an endless desire for knowledge, so I always have endless questions to ask. Liuli looked at Chen Guang calmly. I'll allow you to act cool for another 5 minutes. The world is so beautiful, but you are so violent. This is not good, not good. The great prophet Chen once said. Chen Guang's pretentious act finally ended with him being beaten up by Liuli. The familiar pain of fists hitting flesh made him quickly separate himself from the great prophet and sage who was revered by tens of thousands of people in the sea of moments. I'm asking you to train your mind, not to become a fraud. What did you learn from me? Liuli's emotions were so out of control that she almost forgot that she was a god emperor. Damn, you can't blame me for this. You don't know how high my status in the sea of moments is. Even my fart has a scribe beside me. Sage calendar year 78, March 4th at noon, the great sage went through an internal excretion, and Sage Lord became even greater. You've been living like this for the past 100 years. What else can I do? I didn't even bring any books in, so what a waste. If you bring a few more books in and let me study for 100 years, when I come out, I'll definitely be the greatest scientist in the history of mankind. Chen Guang shrugged his shoulders. If I don't find some fun, then wouldn't I be bored to death? It's over. Your mentality is already old, but you haven't improved at all. You're basically an old trash with a young face. Chen Guang looked at Liuli with disdain. If I'm also an old trash when I'm over 200 years old and I sleep for 100 years, Then how useless are you, Lord Lioli? Chen Guang didn't know if people who lived longer were smarter or not, but he felt that he was getting bolder and bolder. Finally, Lioli's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. She clenched her teeth and her eyes emitted a glint that looked like she was about to devour someone. My great, wise, and intelligent Lord Lioli. Although I've never been to the Endless God Realm, I know that in the Endless God Realm, you are definitely the most beautiful star shining in the sky. Thanks to Master Flatterer Bob, I've been flattering that fellow for over 100 years. Even if I haven't eaten pork, I've seen pigs run. Seeing that the situation was bad, Chen Guang recalled the countless flatterers that Bob had flattered in the past 100 years. After decisively adapting it, he blurted it out. The effect of Master Bob's flattery was indeed outstanding. Lioli's anger quickly dropped to zero and she revealed a satisfied smile. It seems like your improvement this time is quite remarkable. I was wrong about you just now. The hell, you mean that I've improved by learning how to flatter? In the end, this is what you're after. Thinking about it carefully, in his long life in the Sea of Time, it seems that most of his memories were of Bob's flattery. The only thing that can surpass Bob is probably the time when he and Annie fought the 8 desolate lands. Chen Guang was shocked and takes a step back. Could it be, your original intention was... Lioli saw through his thoughts and charmingly rolled her eyes at him. If you want to think that way, then I won't oppose it. By the way, before you scram, you'd better find a place to sit down and use your 200-year-old brain to recall the things that happened in real life. That way, it'll be awkward if you don't know anyone when you go out. Oh right, I have over 200 billion faith points in the Sea of Time every day. Didn't you say that you can exchange it? How much can I exchange for? This was the question that Chen Guang was most concerned about. He roared. If you don't know, then look for yourself. Lioli roared back at him with an even louder voice. Standing beside the pile driver Tintin statue that was as long as a fingernail, Chen Guang ridiculed. 2 statues add up to 29,000. Your exchange rate is too low. Over 200 billion is only so little. Speak. You unscrupulous contractor, are you purposely deducting the old man's faith points? Are you deducting 20 million every day until I'm only left with 29,000? Hee hee. Also, didn't you say that my Tintin statue is very big? What the hell is this 1-inch nail? It was very big before, but then I felt that it wasn't very elegant, so I shrunk it a little and used up a chance to change its appearance. Lioli shrugged. This isn't restoring the truth at all. You are tampering with history. If someone sees it in the future, they will think that I'm really that small. Chen Guang raised his back in protest. Lioli took a deep breath and finally said, I can't take it anymore. Goodbye. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Chen Guang didn't bother to find a corner to reminisce about the past. He decisively ran away. Light flashed, and he finally returned to reality. He slowly put down the cup of water in front of his mouth. It seemed that only a moment had passed in the outside world. He still had the gold medal of the China Amateur Darts Championship hanging around his neck. Not far from him was Enchanting, the little lowly, holding her phone and recording a live broadcast. Further away were Papalika and the other foreign players who were about to leave. Shaking his head slightly, memories gradually surfaced in his mind. Chen Guang had to quickly recall what had happened based on his current environment. That's right, I seem to have easily won the Amateur Darts Championship with 9 darts. Then, the Chinese contestants and the people from the Escort Association all knelt down and became my die-hard fans. I guess that the old men in front of the TV were also convinced. The bullet screen in the live broadcast room should be exploding right now. However, those foreigners seemed to have a problem with it. They felt that the old man had cheated and wanted to pressure the Escort Association to check if the darts used by the old man were deceptive. Then, the old man of the Escort Association supported me and told them that this was China and that they didn't have the final say. Then this group of people left angrily. Before they left, they said something in a language that wasn't English. I didn't understand what they were talking about, so I wasn't in a good mood. Then, I entered the world within Cup and was forced to learn 4,978 languages. That's right, It was this group of unlucky scumbags who showed off their dialects in front of the old man, causing the old man to enter the Sea of Moments without any preparation. Unforgivable. I don't know why, but the two words, old man, sound so natural and casual in my heart. Nearly was right. I'm almost a 200-year-old old trash. Take your phone. At this moment, Enchanting suddenly leaned over and stuffed the phone into Chen Guang's hand. What are you doing? Although she looked calm, Chen Guang felt that she looked like an active volcano that was about to erupt. Enchanting remained expressionless. Nothing much. I'm going to break their legs. Although I don't understand what they're saying, I know that they're definitely scolding you. Don't. Chen Guang stuffed the phone back into Enchanting's hand and stood in front of her. There are so many people watching. The World Championship is about to start. If you break someone's legs, wouldn't that be a diplomatic incident? Enchanting shook her head. It's fine. I can handle it. You'd better behave yourself. How could Chen Guang really let her break their bones? How would he be able to participate in the World Championship? He was still waiting for the World Championship to earn some faith points. Reality proved that although there were many people in the Sea of Moments and it was easy to earn faith points, the exchange rate was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. Real life was the foundation. So you're just going to get scolded for nothing? Enchanting tilted her head and looked at him. Chen Guang shook his head. Don't be anxious. Watch me. Xiaohu, come over and take notes. After saying that, Chen Guang turned around and quickly chased after Helvide, Papalika, and Wakin. A3, stop right there. Pulling along Little Hu, Chen Guang chased after the three of them and called out to the three of them. Papalika turned around impatiently. What do you want? Do you want to beat me up? The Spaniard, Wakin, could tell that something was wrong with the atmosphere. He furrowed his brows. Just as Elder Zhao had said, this was the territory of the Chinese. This young man seemed to have a bad temper, and he was very popular in China. If there was a conflict between the two sides, the foreigners would be in trouble. Wakin shielded Papalika behind him, indicating that he shouldn't act rashly. Everyone, the competition is over. As a permanent member of the World Darts Federation, I'm sincerely happy that a talented young player like Mr. Chen has appeared in China. However, if there's a scandal of someone beating up an international player during the competition, I'm afraid the consequences will be severe. The Englishman, Bant Wilkins, who had been indifferent to the matter, could no longer sit still. He turned around and said so. As the most successful darts player in history and a permanent director of the World Darts Association, he had the right to say such a thing. Liang Fatsai quickly tried to calm Chen Guang down, afraid that things would get out of hand. What? Are you scared? Why weren't you scared when you were scolding us just now? Seeing that the situation wasn't in their favor, they immediately used their identity in the World Escort Association to pressure them. However, Chen Guang only smiled sinisterly. After such a long time, he finally recalled what those fellows said in their native language or Spanish, and they were all extremely unpleasant to the ears. Helvide argued, "Don't talk nonsense. We weren't scolding anyone." Papalika also lied through his teeth. "We were obviously praising you just now, sir." Having been in a high position in the Sea of Moments for so long, Chen Guang had almost forgotten what it felt like to be scoundrel in front of others. Only a few seconds had passed in the outside world, but 200 years had passed in the Sea of Moments. But to him, this once familiar feeling had become so strange, yet so familiar. He suddenly smiled. Although the Sea of Moments was good, living in it always felt like a dream. Because of the omnipotent faith points, it was too easy to obtain anything. Instead, it gave him a strong feeling that it was unreal. Comparing the two, life in the real world was still more interesting. Experiencing life in the Sea of Moments with a heaven-defying hack was like rootless duckweed. Because the starting point was too high, it was inevitable that he would look at everything from the perspective of a bystander. But fighting with people in the real world, even if it was just a verbal argument, it was still fun. The 5 flavors of life, sour, sweet, bitter, spicy, and salty, could only be tasted in the real world. The bystanders didn't understand what his smile meant. The Englishman, Wilkins, was even more nervous. He had often heard that there was a type of Huaxia person who prided themselves on etiquette that was especially scary. When he was yelling at you, there was still room for negotiation. But when he suddenly calmed down and smiled at you, it meant that he was going to beat you up. "Mr. Chen, don't do anything stupid," Wilkins hurriedly said. Even if Huaxia was expelled from the World Escort Association, it would not be worth it for them to get hurt here. "Wilkins, I am indeed very angry now, but don't treat me like a barbarian like them. As for whether they scolded anyone, I think they know very well in their hearts." Chen Guang didn't take Wilkins' threat seriously. "Of course we didn't." The matter seemed to have reached a point where it couldn't be stopped. Watkins still refused to admit it. The three of them didn't expect this Huaxia person to be so persistent. If Chen Guang hadn't understood what the three of them were saying, he might have really let them go. But now that he understood, of course he wouldn't let it go. "Is that so? You, do you dare to swear to God?" Chen Guang pointed at Bapalika, Wakin, and Helvide. "But you are humiliating us. This is a shameful scandal." The three of them were guilty, so of course they didn't dare to swear. Just then, a strange language came out of Chen Guang's mouth. It wasn't Mandarin, nor was it English. It was the language that the three of them had spoken when they were scolding Chen Guang. From the pronunciation to the words, it was exactly the same as what they had said before. F***ck, what kind of memory does this guy have? He actually remembered all of my weird pronunciation. The three of them were extremely shocked and began to panic. If he really memorized it like that, he might really be able to translate it to a linguist after this. It was very likely that they would be reported to the International Security Association, and it would become a big issue. Chapter 5:16. That's what you said just now, right? By the way, I forgot to tell you that in addition to being a darts player, I am also a very famous online streamer. Now I have nearly 3 million viewers in my live broadcast room. What you said just now has been recorded in my live broadcast room. You'd better not lie through your teeth, or I will make you the laughingstock of the world. Chen Guang looked at the three of them. With his influence on the Chinese internet, it might be an exaggeration to say that he was the laughingstock of the world, but he could make them famous in China for a while. Other than that, it was not impossible for China's trending news to affect the international community. This group of international friends was really scared. "Yes, that's what I said just now." Papalika's face changed. He did not expect the little girl wearing a mask and holding a mobile phone to be doing a live broadcast. "But I mean no harm. My pronunciation just now..." "Shut up. I also said the same thing to you too, right?" Chen Guang looked at Helvide and Wakin. The two of them looked at each other and nodded helplessly. "Since you two have admitted to it, then let me translate what these three people just said," Chen Guang said with a smile. "You said that this Asian monkey is a shameful liar. Honestly speaking, you're the one who's a person of color. Isn't it inappropriate for you to say such racist words?" Chen Guang pointed at Helvide from Mauritius. "You said that all Chinese people are shameful cheaters. You said that Chinese people like to use despicable means to achieve their goals. Am I right?" "I'm Papalika from the Fidos tribe in the Tennessee River region," Chen Guang said as he looked at Papalika. "Wakin from the province of Tarragona, Catalonia. You just greeted my family. Now, I will use the international language to return the favor. **ck. Are you satisfied?" Chen Guang said to Wakin. "How is this possible?" The three of them were shocked. What the hell? It had only been less than a minute since they started scolding him. Where did he find a translator? Was he one of the viewers in the live broadcast? There was no reason for that. The three of us are speaking very unpopular languages that not many people would learn. Even in our own country, there are not many people who know them. How could it be so coincidentally in this guy's live broadcast room? Chen Guang felt proud of the three of them when he saw their dumbfounded expressions. To be honest, because of the three of you idiots, in order to teach you a lesson, in order to act so insignificant in front of you, I was actually sent to the Sea of Transient to live for more than 200 years. How honored should you be? This was probably the most expensive act of showing off in history. Now, I'll give you one last chance to apologize. Little Who, do you remember what I just said? Other than the last motherf asterisk cur, write down everything else. Make it into materials and prepare to file a complaint. Just say that the foreign contestants criticized our domestic competition and even insulted China's national champion in public after the competition. Write down the severity of the matter and send it to UNESCO. Chen Guang turned around and spoke to Xiao Hu in English. Everyone rolled their eyes. Do you still want to call the peacekeepers to sweep the area? You're even bringing up UNESCO. Sir, I'm sorry. Papalika was disgusted, but he was in the right, so he had no choice but to bow his head. Walkin and Helvide looked at each other and apologized in unison. The 2 to 3 million viewers in the live broadcast room who had seen the whole thing from beginning to end were instantly overjoyed. A live broadcast of face-slapping foreigners had really succeeded. The other party had actually lowered his head and admitted his mistake. He was indeed Brother Almighty. After apologizing, Papalika and the other two thought that Qin Guang would generously forgive them. Unexpectedly, Qin Guang flipped his hair and said, "All right, you can go. Before you go, I'll give you an ancient Chinese saying, frogs at the bottom of a well don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You've never seen it, so you think it's impossible. You can't do it, so you think I have to cheat. I'll wait for you at the World Championship. 9 darts. No matter what the competition is, no matter how far I stand, I still only want 9 darts." All the foreign players, including Wilkins, were already cursing in their hearts. F***ck, this guy's style is different from the average Huaxia person. You don't have the demeanor of a great country. You're really petty. Our heads are already so low, and you're still so ruthless? Chen Guang smiled as he watched the group of people run away dejectedly. I'm not targeting anyone. I'm just saying that everyone here is the old man's faith. Brothers, everyone, that's all for today's live broadcast. I'll see you at the World Championship the day after tomorrow. Chen Guang turned to Enchanting's camera and gestured with his finger. He winked. Now that he had won the national championship, the production of the God of Darts statue had finally exceeded the 10,000 mark. Adding on the 29,000 that came from the Sea of Moments mine every day, it felt like a salted fish turning over a new leaf. Just as Chen Guang was thinking about this in his heart, the cup in his hand moved again. Inexplicably, thick white fog flew over from all directions in the sky, covering the sky and covering the earth. It even filled the entire indoor stadium. Chen Guang raised his hand slightly. He even felt that his body was wrapped up in the thick white fog, making it difficult for him to even lift his hand. It was as if his whole body had sunk into a swamp. What the hell is this? Is this faith? Where did it come from? Is it trying to drown me with this thick fog? His nose twitched, and he smelled a familiar scent from the thick white fog. An ominous feeling rose in his heart, and his expression changed drastically. F***ck me. He hurriedly shifted his attention away, no longer thinking about the white fog that was produced by the heavenly Holy Grail. The thick white fog outside finally faded in his perception and finally disappeared. Chen Guang raised the cup again and focused his attention on the 5 big and 1 small statues. After a long time, he recovered with a pale face. He stared blankly at the ceiling and silently said, "Indeed, pornography is the #1 productivity of mankind." The pile driver statue was about to explode. According to the order of appearance, the pile driver was named Little Six. Now that Little Six had just made his debut, he had decisively destroyed the 10,000-year-old Ao Ta statue. Little Six was no bigger than an inch nail. Disregarding the fixed output of 10,000 something in the Sea of Moments, in just a short while, after connecting with everyone in the real world, its daily output had actually soared to 38,000 in one go. Now, the total daily production of Faith had reached 97,500 and was approaching the 100,000 mark. The benevolent and wise sage Chen Guang couldn't help but feel sad for many people in this world. How stubborn must you all be to silently send so many faith points before the old man even started to advertise? You all don't need to advertise. Who is the strongest man in the world? Everyone, Don't let your imaginations run wild. I'm not going to change my name or my surname. Chen Guang silently patted Little Hu's shoulder. That's right, this guy also sent as many as 5 points a day. This poor guy's married life must be super unharmonious. That pungent smell just now? Forget it, quickly forget about those unhappy things. Let's look at my inventory first. Previously in the Sea of Moments, I didn't use much faith points. After coming out, although I lost a lot of faith points from the Sea of Moments, to the point that it was almost zero, I didn't use up much of the more than 300,000 faith points that I saved before entering the Sea of Moments. Damn it, he suddenly realized something. A day in the real world was equivalent to a year in the transient sea. His exchange rate wasn't more than 200 billion to 29,000, it had to be multiplied by 365. Lori's cheating index has skyrocketed by 365 times. Forget it, she is a god. Her fist is bigger, so she has the final say. This exchange rate is indeed very unscientific, but Lori is a true god. She pays attention to theology and not science. The so-called theology does not reason with you. If God says the heavens are square, then the heavens must be square, let alone a small matter like this. Putting aside those unhappy thoughts, Chen Guang began to feel happy again. According to the current situation, it probably wouldn't take more than a few days to save 600,000, and it wouldn't be so far-fetched to save 6 million. He calculated the time in his heart. Anyway, he was already in Beijing. After participating in the World Darts Championship, he also promised his right-hand woman to go to their whatever concert. Wu Tong was also in Beijing. Although he didn't know where she was training in seclusion, it wouldn't be right for him to come here without telling her. Most importantly, he couldn't get in touch with Wenwen recently. Although Chen Guang knew that she wouldn't encounter any trouble with her ability, he still couldn't stop worrying about her. If she really had any troubles, dragging her to play a few rounds of games to relieve her feelings would be considered being a good friend. Therefore, he estimated that he wouldn't be able to return to Beijing anytime soon. It was better to call Xue Lin, his cheap disciple, and ask her to come to Beijing herself. On the other side, Chen Guang sat in the car and called Xue Lin. He happily said that he would set off immediately. On the other side, Chen Guang saw that Enchanting didn't get into the car. She looked troubled. Having known her for so long, Chen Guang had never seen this little girl distressed. What's wrong? Chen Guang got out of the car and asked. Enchanting shook her head slightly. Nothing. She looked like she didn't want to talk about it anymore. Then she sat down in the car. Guys, the competition is over. Do you want to travel somewhere? The driver arranged by the Escort Association in the front row turned around and asked. He was quite curious about the relationship between these two. They looked like brother and sister, but there was no warmth in their conversation. Especially this ridiculously cute little girl. From time to time, she would sweetly call Mr. Chen brother, and from time to time, she would suddenly go crazy and put on a cold face. She was simply crazy. No, let's go back to the hotel. Chen Guang had a lot on his mind and wasn't in the mood to travel. Back at the hotel, Enchanting still grabbed the computer to organize the videos. She was typing furiously on the keyboard. Her movements were so fast that Chen Guang was dazzled. Those who didn't know what was going on would think that she was torturing the keyboard, but Chen Guang knew that every time she made a video, the editing was very beautiful. The number of fans on Weibo had increased again. Recently, the content of the comments below basically revolved around the darts competition. Everyone seemed to have gradually adapted to the omnipotence of the almighty Superman. In any case, he crushed whatever he did. Today, there was a new hot topic. During the live broadcast, he caught a few of Papalika's unfriendly international friends and scolded them. Enthusiastic fans had made a video of it and posted it on the internet. Joaquin's Catalan dialect was translated by some Spanish experts, and it was exactly what Chen Guang said. But for the other two indigenous Indian languages and the Mauritian indigenous language, no one could say anything about them no matter how noisy the internet was. But without a doubt, when Chen Guang explained the meaning of the two languages, the two foreigners lowered their heads. Their faces were full of fear and helplessness after their prank was exposed. This meant that what Chen Guang said was right. He really wasn't making a wild guess. That was scary. How could there be such an awesome interpreter on the field? From the time he was scolded to the time he exposed the other party's malice, it took less than a minute. How did this guy know the meaning of swear words in 3 different languages? Some kind of unacceptable speculation gradually emerged in the hearts of the almighty Superman fans. Could it be that, in addition to racing and sharpening pencils, Brother Almighty was also a hidden linguist? But that didn't make sense at all. The change in style was too King fast. It was hard for us to accept. A certain guy from the Jianhuan College posted below, "Hello everyone, I'm Brother Almighty's schoolmate. We were in the same dormitory during military training, and I've known him for more than 3 years. Let me tell you something, Brother Almighty has taken English Band 4 6 times, and he still hasn't passed. Our college has given him a nickname, 5 consecutive kneels in Band 4. You guys can feel it. This semester's results haven't come out yet. He'll definitely pass this time." One of Chen Guang's diehard fans was unhappy. Last week when I went to his dormitory, he was still praying to Brother Chun. A group of fans expressed that their outlook on life had been turned upside down. Fortunately, a Spanish expert stood up to change the topic. This dialect of the Catalan province of Tarragona, in the whole of Spain, only a small number of people in the Sumint district of Morid-Lira can speak it. There are no more than 500,000 people in the world who have mastered this language. This language is also a relatively unorthodox dialect in Spain, and the pronunciation is very different from the orthodox Spanish, just like the relationship between our country's Wunong Ruo and the official Mandarin. I can understand the meaning after repeated replays, and it's also because I'm currently living in the Sumint district. I really can't understand how Mr. Chen Guang can understand it. This was the evaluation of the Spanish expert. I'm a Chinese American. My family has been living in the United States for more than 3 generations, and I'm currently studying Native American linguistics. I'm sure that Papalika is speaking some kind of Native American language, but I can only determine a small number of the simplest words, which are similar to the meaning of Chinese. I'm currently contacting my Native American classmates, and I'll give you an accurate translation in half an hour. In any case, this short clip had clearly caused quite a stir on the internet, purely because it was too unreasonable and too sci-fi. After scrolling through his Weibo, Chen Guang browsed through the embarrassing female fans' photos in his private messages one by one. He turned around and noticed the short clip on the video website. When he opened it, he was also shocked. The number of comments had already reached 5,000, and the number of hits had exceeded 1 million in 2 hours. This was going viral. Damn it, who uploaded this video? My advertising fees have been taken away by this bastard. Forget it, I don't lack this bit of money right now. I reckon that little Tsong will send me a large sum of money tomorrow morning, and today's live stream is quite profitable. He quickly fell into another train of thought. Up until now, he had only not been able to erect a statue of God in the world in a cup at the spirit sky level. He didn't think about English, there was no hope. Qilin arm? In this regard, he was like a cow gnawing on a pumpkin, not knowing where to start. It wasn't that he didn't try it in the Sea of Time, but he lost to a mere sea emperor in arm wrestling, so he instantly gave up on it. But, including English, he had mastered 4,979 foreign languages. Of course, there was no hope for English alone, but if he took out nearly 5,000 foreign languages, he could easily beat the entire human race, okay? This statue of God was very easy to erect. He didn't even need to display all of them, he could just pull out 200 or 300, and people would kneel to the point of breaking their knees, okay? The statue of One-Line Sky was more or less different from the statue of Spirit Sky, right? When he thought of this, he couldn't suppress his excitement. On the other side, Enchanting, who had just finished uploading the video online, also noticed the commotion. She turned around from her swivel chair. "Big brother Chen Guang, how did you understand what those people said today?" Chen Guang laughed, thinking I was just about to show off, and you came to ask me, are you an actor sent by God to cooperate with me? Little sister, please pay attention to your words. The person standing in front of you is the greatest linguist in human history. I'm not bragging. As long as it's a language that people on Earth speak, there is no language that I can't understand. He still had to keep a low profile outside, but in front of his own people, he naturally had to speak his mind and not hide his abilities. After saying that, Chen Guang looked at Enchanting with a smile, waiting for her to look at him with an expression of worship. I don't believe you. He never expected that Enchanting, one of his own people, would actually undermine him. I'll just say something casually, and if you can translate it, I'll believe you. Seeing Chen Guang's face turn dark, Enchanting slightly tilted her head, giving him another chance to prove himself. Say it. Shiba Yamadai Luo Ku Tagu Jie. Chen Guang, damn dog, don't do it for the tribe. Go play the victory. Chapter 517. Tisk, I'm going to wash up and sleep. As the saying goes, acting cool depends on who you're dealing with. For a violent lowly like Enchanting, whose brain circuitry was different from normal people, Chen Guang's acting cool in front of her obviously wouldn't end well. Seeing her turn around and go to the bathroom, she took out a Mickey Mouse toothbrush from her bag and started brushing her teeth. Chen Guang shrugged, indicating that he was defeated by this unromantic child. Sometimes he was also quite puzzled. What did the old man do to deserve this? She didn't ask for a salary, nor did she ask for any benefits, but she always fooled around with him. From time to time, he heard her say things like master and the internal energy in her body, and looking at her usual behavior, although she seemed to be lacking in a brain, she definitely had some background. Could it be that she was like Wenwen, some kind of big missy? Needless to say, then the family behind her probably wouldn't last long. Look at what kind of idlers you've raised. Lying on the bed, playing with his phone in boredom, Chen Guang was worried about his tomorrow. The World Championship was the day after tomorrow, which meant that he would have nothing to do tomorrow. This wouldn't do. The old man was now a young man with dreams and pursuits. He had to keep himself busy. Life is short, how can I waste it? Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, he suddenly opened WeChat and clicked on Jiang Yage's profile picture. Although he didn't want to admit it, deep in his heart, he really hoped that Jiang Yage would take a bigger picture. In the end, he didn't see the bigger picture, but the picture in front of him made his scalp go numb. Good luck for the competition the day after tomorrow. It's a pity that I have to prepare for a concert and can't watch it live. Remember to come to the concert at night. All right. Sister Shirue and I went to Australia last week and happened to visit the master craftsman, Jamie Laurent. I pestered him to make a watch strap. Do you like it? The photo that Jiang Yage sent was the work of Jamie Laurent. There were artistic words printed on the outside of the leather watchband. On it was written in English, left and right hands and light. The artistic words looked like a painting and were very charming. In fact, with Chen Guang's outlook on life, he really didn't understand the special purpose of finding a master to make a watchband for a watch. It was purely because he had too much money. The core function of a watch had already been replaced by a mobile phone. When he was poor, he felt that spending more than $1,000,000 on a watch was a very crazy thing to do. Now that he was rich, he somewhat understood the feelings of those who bought luxury goods. They had too much money and wanted to buy the best of everything. For a watch that had a certain function and could also be used as jewelry, it was not a big deal to spend more than $1,000,000. The necklaces that people hid in their clothes and could not be seen by others were easily worth millions. But it's fine if you buy a watch, but if you go and find a master to buy a watch strap, that's too much. What's even more embarrassing is that I've already resold the watch. Chen Guang went to search for who Jamie Laurent was, but he couldn't find much information about him. He only saw someone mentioning him on a forum. It was said that this person was the most famous leather goods master in Australia. His style was so high that it made people's hair stand on end. The leather bags he made were worth 10 Louis Vuitton, at the very least. Even a random leather watchband he made was worth tens of thousands of dollars. Chen Guang wanted to curse. You're telling me that a piece of leather the width of 2 fingers is worth tens of thousands of dollars? Are you King kidding me? The world of the rich was really scary. Wait, that's not right. The old man should be considered a rich man by now. It wasn't too much to wear a watch worth more than 1,000,000 yuan, and a watch band worth tens of thousands of dollars was also acceptable. But I don't have a watch now. How can I explain it to her? For a moment, he only felt extremely melancholic. Back when he sold the Patek Philippe that he had given to himself, frankly speaking, he didn't feel any guilt. At that time, Chen Guang and Jin Jiang weren't very familiar with each other, and he wasn't pretentious enough to want to be friends with the two superstars. He was just a poor student who was lucky enough to save their lives, and they gave him a gift out of gratitude. Then the gift was mine, and I could do whatever I wanted with it. After that, we would go our separate ways and have nothing to do with each other anymore. It was that simple. Back then, he was so poor that he viewed his relationship with Jin Shirue and Jiang Yage purely as a businessman. Without Chen Guang, they really would be dead. If their lives were only worth a few million yuan, that would be a pure insult. Their combined income of hundreds of millions of yuan every year had been a regular on the Forbes celebrity list since they were 16, and had never fallen out of the top 10. The kindness of saving their lives was completely settled with a watch worth more than 1,000,000 yuan. They had made a lot of money, okay? His mother was also waiting for money to save her life. The Patek Philippe took it with its left hand and sold it with its right hand. He didn't owe them anything, and they didn't owe him anything either. But later, Chen Guang didn't expect that Jin Shirue and Jiang Yage would really treat him as a friend, and that they would be so generous. When dealing with Wang Ren and Su Lijing, they even said that he was Jin Shirue's boyfriend. The word boyfriend was easy to say, but for a young female artist in her 20s, it almost ruined her future. This straightforwardness and loyalty were comparable to that of his and Zhu Jifa's, who had grown up together. Although it was inconceivable and hard to understand, Chen Guang knew that the two of them really regarded him as a friend. There was no need to thank them with words, and it would be hypocritical to say too many polite words. Until now, although Chen Guang didn't always say thank you, the position of Jin Shirue and Jiang Yage in his heart was no longer the same as before. Jin Shirue and Jiang Yage had indeed refreshed his view of celebrities. Although they were glamorous and aloof on TV, accompanied by bodyguards everywhere when they went out, they were still true girls in private. Once they found you pleasing to the eye, they would really be willing to sincerely treat you as a friend. This made Chen Guang very touched and happy. He also remembered the kindness of others, and had already opened his heart to the two of them. After watching your video, oh no, anyway, we will be real friends in the future. After inexplicably becoming true friends, it didn't seem right for him to sell the gift that the girl had carefully prepared for him. It was Bronte Comet's work, and it was even a super limited edition with their artistic signatures embedded on it. Originally, he had almost forgotten about Patek Philippe. The matter was over, and the debt of gratitude could be slowly returned in the future. But suddenly, Jiang Yage made such a statement, which caught him off guard. Chen Guang hesitated. He might as well confess to the two of them and tell them directly, "I sold your watch?" No, it was too shameful, and it would make others sad. When a woman gave a man an expensive watch, it often had a different meaning. It was to make the man look down at the watch from time to time and think of them when he saw the watch. Perhaps this was the intention of the two of them when they inlaid their names on the watch in the first place. Silently putting down the phone, Chen Guang's mind was filled with confusion. He didn't dare to reply to Jiang Yage's text message at all, and could only think of a way to save himself. Should I lie to them and say that I left the watch in Wujing and didn't bring it with me? That would be useless. He could hide from the monk, but he couldn't hide from the temple. They had already bought the leather belt worth tens of thousands of dollars, and he couldn't let them plant it in their own hands. With Jiang Yage's character, what if she suddenly attacked him one day and jumped in front of him in Wujing? Dang 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 dang. Give me the watch, I'll change the tape for you. Wouldn't it be even more embarrassing if he was exposed? Looking at the time, it was already 11:30 at night. Never mind, I'll try to contact Linny and see if he can buy the watch back. Although this matter seemed to be quite bullsh*t. Back then, when he was poor and in urgent need of money, Xiao Linzi, the man in the white suit, spent 1.2 million yuan to buy the watch without hesitation. He was also very righteous and honest. Now that he was rich, he wanted to buy the watch back. Logically speaking, he was not being kind. But at worst, he could just add a few 100,000 more. If he bought it back for 2 million, he could just treat it as giving him 800,000, right? He just didn't know how much favor Linny had done for the brother in a white suit back then. Maybe it would make Linny a little embarrassed, but weren't brothers meant to be cheated? Compared to making Jiang Yage and Jin Shirue sad, there was no psychological burden at all to cheat Linny. Brother, what are you doing? It's already so late. On the other side of the phone, Linny was feeling a little drowsy, and it seemed that he was about to fall asleep. What are you doing? It's only 11:30, and you're already asleep? Do you think I'm as restless as you? My biological clock is super scientific, okay? Lin Jingwei defended himself. Linny, who is it? Tell me. Is it one of your childhood sweethearts? Next to him, Gao Ya's voice was even more drowsy. Chen Guang. Lin Jingwei, you too can do it. Very good, very powerful. Your biological clocks are very scientific. After a long time, Chen Guang complained. On the other side, Gao Ya had heard Chen Guang's voice clearly through the hands-free phone. She blushed and said in a husky voice, I'm Lin Gingxin, Jingwei's cousin. Lin Gingxin, the almighty Superman, Chen Guang? I like your racing videos very much, and I'm your fan. Please pay attention to my new movie. Gao Ya, don't pretend to be a man. You two are not real. Chen Guang interrupted Gao Ya. Gao Ya spat and ran off to somewhere unknown. Brother, why did you call me so late? After Gao Ya ran away, Lin Gingxin asked with a bitter face. Chen Guang forwarded the picture of the watch that Jiang Yage had sent to Lin Jingwei on WeChat, and then said, Can you contact the white guy who bought my Patek Philippe watch? I want to buy the watch back. I'll raise the price. I have about 2 million in cash now. I'll raise it by 800,000. Lin Jingwei's face became even more bitter. Brother, this is embarrassing. Money is not a problem. Chen Guang said anxiously, There's no other way. Jiang Yage said she found a leather goods master called Jamie Laurent to make a watch strap. One piece of leather is worth tens of thousands of dollars, and she wants to give it to me. I'm very depressed now. A watch strap made by Jamie himself? He even designed a special artistic font. She had to do a lot of favors to get it. Jiang Yage really cares about you. If I were her, I would be so angry that I wouldn't be able to eat for 3 days if I knew you sold the watch. Lin Jingwei also realized the seriousness of the problem. Don't talk about Shangxin anymore. I've already realized my mistake. I feel guilty. Lin Jingwei agreed. You're worse than a beast. That's right. You heartless and unscrupulous scum. Yes. You're such an ingrate who eats people without spitting out the bones. You're right. That's enough. Say something useful. I turned on the recording. Do you believe I won't clip your conversation with Gao Ya and send it to the class chat group? Lin Jingwei admitted defeat after scolding him twice. Brother, I was wrong. I'll call Brother Xiao Bai and see what he has to say. The brother Bai he was talking about was the young man in a white suit who bought the Patek Philippe watch for 1.2 million without batting an eyelid. Like his name, his clothes and surname were very white. 5 minutes later, Lin Jingwei called back. This is embarrassing. What did Brother Bai say? Brother Bai said that I can take the watch back, but I have to agree to one condition. Is it a price increase? Now that he was not short of money, Chen Guang felt that any problem that could be solved with money was not a problem. No. Brother Bai is right. You have to step over his dead body. Damn it. It's just a watch. Is there a need to do this? What kind of godly condition is this? He also said something else. What? He will beat you up every time he sees you. He won't even give me face, Lin Jingwei said. At this moment, Chen Guang had an uneasy feeling in his heart. He's not finished. Chen Guang was about to break down. Can you finish the bad news in one go? You're going to kill me. He has to go to the concert the day after tomorrow with the watch. He will expose you on the spot and tell Jin Shirue that you sold the watch they gave you. Did Brother Bai have a grudge against me in my previous life? Was there a need to set me up like this? Chen Guang was about to explode. Lin Jingwei shook his head. I don't know if there was a grudge in your previous life, but there must be a grudge between you and him in this life. He has been chasing after Jin Shiyue for 8 to 9 years, since they were teenagers. Now that you've become Jin Shiyue's fake boyfriend, he might not have thought of this if we didn't mention it today. Let's give him a reminder. Then why did you introduce him to me? Who would have thought that you would be so good at stirring up trouble? Even Jin Shiyue had to fake a relationship with you to protect you. Only the few of us knew it was fake. Brother Bai must have thought it was real. He hates you to death. So you're blaming me? It's hard to guard against life's events. Can you at least give me some constructive advice? Lin Jingwei thought for a long time. Brother Guang, I do have a constructive suggestion. What do you mean? Steal your sister? Stealing something worth more than 1,000,000 yuan? Your suggestion is very constructive. You're building a jail cell for me. It's fine. You just have to pay me after this. Brother Bai's circle will not sue you for something worth more than 1,000,000 yuan. This kind of thing was about something else, a matter of face. Actually, he and I are very close, but he doesn't have much hope of wooing Jin Shiyue. He's just trying to save face and teach you a lesson. I'll admit it to you. Brother Bai and I grew up together. I can take responsibility for this. At most, he'll pull my ear and scold me. Chen Guang understood what Lin Jingwei was trying to say. Both sides were close friends, and with Lin Jingwei in the middle to mediate, this matter was neither big nor small. After chatting for a while, Lin Jingwei decided to meet him at the hotel the next morning. They were going to Brother Bai's headquarters in Beijing. It was said that he couldn't bear to wear the watch after he got it, so he kept it in his office as a souvenir. At this time, Bai Hua had no idea that these two great thieves had already set their eyes on Jin Shiyue's souvenir. When it comes to relationships, there's no right or wrong. If it wasn't for Qin Guang's interference, with Bai Hua and Jin Shiyue's family background, as long as Bai Hua worked hard, he might really become Jin Shiyue's fiancé in the future. However, from the moment Jin Shiyue announced that Qin Guang was her boyfriend, Bai Hua had no chance in this lifetime. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.